Καλησπέρα και καλώς ήρθατε σε άλλη μία λέξη εκφραστικής ανάγνωσης εν μέσω κορονοϊού 2021. Πέρασε αρκετός καιρός από την τελευταία μας μετάδοση και αυτό οφείλεται σε διάφορους λόγους, τους οποίους δεν θα τους αναλύσω εδώ πέρα, δεν υπάρχει λόγος. Επιστρέφω για λίγο. Καρέκλα κάνει φασαρία, δυστυχώς. Επιστρέφω για λίγο στα Ιταλικά έπι και στην Λ.Ε.Α. του Torquato Tasso, την οποία την έχω συμπεριλάβει σε προηγούμενα βίντεο και το 20 και φέτος. Και αυτή τη φορά θα κάνω αυτό που έκανα και για την Αλτσίνα του Λουδοβίκο Αριόστο. Ξεχώρισα τα αποσπάσματα που αφορούν στην αντίστοιχη μάγισσα του Torquato Tasso, την Armida. Η Armida είναι μια ενδιαφέρουσα αλλά ταυτόχρονα και κάπως προβληματική περίπτωση. Γενικά, το συγκεκριμένο έπος, παρότι εξαιρετικό φυσικά σαν κείμενο με τα σημερινά δεδομένα, έχει ορισμένα θεματάκια, τα οποία έχουν κυρίως να κάνουν με το γεγονός ότι ο σκοπός του κειμένου στην τελική είναι να δείξει ότι οι χριστιανοί είναι οι καλύτεροι όλων και οι μουσουλμάνοι φυσικά οι απόλυτοι βάρβαροι και οι μόνοι έτσι, υπάρχουν μόνο δύο λύσεις για το συγκεκριμένο πρόβλημα για τους μουσουλμάνους ήρωες που εμφανίζονται στο κείμενο, ή πρέπει να θανατωθούν ή στο τέλος πάντων αποφασίζουν να βαπτιστούν χριστιανοί. Η Αρμίδα τη γλιτώνει στο τέλος, όπως θα δείτε, παρακολουθήστε το βίντεο μέχρι το τέλος, και κάνει ακριβώς αυτό, δηλαδή βαπτίζεται χριστιανή και αναλαμβάνει ουσιαστικά το ρόλο της συζύγου και υπηρέτριας του κεντρικού ήρωα. Παρ' όλα αυτά, πιστεύω ότι το κείμενο αυτό καθ' αυτό έχει ενδιαφέρον και ο χαρακτήρας επίσης. Και έτσι, ναι, θα ασχοληθώ με αυτό το συγκεκριμένο πρόσωπο από την Λ.Ε.Α. Πάλι η ίδια μετάφραση που είχα χρησιμοποιήσει και στις προηγούμενες μεταδόσεις του Max Wickert. Είναι μεγάλα συνολικά τα αποσπάσματα είναι αρκετά μεγάλα, οπότε δεν είμαι πολύ σίγουρη θα καταφέρω να το τελειώσω μέσα σε μια καθισιά, αλλά δεν πειράζει. Θα το τελειώσω όταν το τελειώσω. Torquato Tasso, Λ.Ε.Α. The Liberation of Jerusalem. They lend him counsel and an instrument to make his plotting prosper soon disclose. He has a niece, and all the Orient no beauty to outshine her beauty shows. Each darkest trick, each subtlest blandishment a woman or a witch can ply she knows. Her now he calls, to her confides his plan, that she might finish what his thought began. Says he, "My darling girl, who know the art to make blond hair and sweet looks hide a wit sharp as a grey beard's in the mannish heart. In sorcery you're my better. Now I've hit upon a mighty plan, and my great start hopes for great issue if you second it. Weave you the ready web I have designed, bold agent for a cautious old man's mind. Go hence into the foeman's camp, there spend all feminine wiles designed to feed love's fire. Your streaming tears with honeyed pleadings blend, let your words falter or in sight expire. Beauty in tears and in distress will bend the most recalcitrant heart to your desire. Your too bold ardour veil in shamefast seeming, and in a cloak of truth disguise your scheming. And if you can, take Godfrey with the bait of sweet regards and speeches passing fair, so that, besotted, he may grow to hate his present quarrel and make war elsewhere. If you cannot, snare any who are great, lead them to regions from which none repair. He sketched details and then concluded, proud, for God and country all things are allowed. Lovely Armida, of her beauty sure, and of her sex's gifts and her youth's power, accepts the task and leaves by an obscure and unknown path at the first evening hour. With a woman's hair and gown she seeks to ensure that a great army, never cowed, shall cower. But for the vulgar why she ventures out, false rumours cunningly are noised about. Not many days thereafter she comes where the Franks have pitched their tents. Soon every eye at this new beauty's sight begins to stare, and a great murmur swells as she draws nigh, even as a comet or a star might flare, never before that day seen in the sky. All crowd around who this might be to know, that lovely pilgrim, and who bids her go. Never did Argus, Cyprus, Delos see form of such fair deportment and address. Like gold her hair one moment gleams, lovely through veils, then unveiled glitters from each tress. So when the sky is clearing, glad and free, now through a radiant cloud the sun shines less, now bursts that cloud and spreads its piercing ray more brightly and redoubles all the day. The breeze new curls some errant tresses maze, the rest by nature curl like waves of light. But inward gathered is her close-kept gaze, and hides love's treasures and her own from sight. A tint of roses in her fair face plays, sprinkled on ivory, mingling with the white. But on her mouth, warm with love's breath, there glows alone in simple ruddiness the rose. Her beauteous breast displays its naked snows that feed love's flame that they themselves have brought. Partly her budding unsucked bosom shows, partly lies hid in envious garments caught. Envious, yes, but though all paths they close to sight, they cannot quite bar amorous thought, that, not content with outward beauties, traces an inward path to hidden, secret places. As through clean water or clear glass, whose state parts not nor ruptures, rays dart from the sun, so mind will in her daring penetrate the veiled, forbidden regions, and, these won, roam through them freely, there to contemplate the truth of countless marvels, one by one, then tell its pictured story to desire, kindling in him an ever livelier fire. Praised, doted on, Armida walks inside the lustful crowd, aware of all, but then gives no sign how her heart laughs to abide her certain triumph at its spoils. And when, after a shy pause, she requests a guide to take her to the leader of these men, young Eustace hastened to her at that word, the brother of the army's sovereign lord. Like moth to lamplight, even so he flies toward her beauty, splendid and divine, longing to view up close those lovely eyes, whose lids now in sweet modesty decline, and like dry straw that near a bonfire lies, takes, hoards the hot flame in his heart's confine, then speaks to her, for youth and loving heat have rendered his audacity complete. O lady, if that term be fit indeed, since like no earthly creature you appear, nor is the daughter born of Adam's seed, in whom the light of heaven shines so clear, What do you seek, and whence do you proceed? What fate of yours or ours now leads you here? Tell me your name. Highest respect, I feel, is due you here. Command me, and I kneel. She answers, Far too high your praises go. My merits are not so superlative. I'm mortal, sir, and not just mortal, no, dead to all joy. In merest grief I live. I've come by mischance driven to and fro, a wandering maiden and a fugitive, in search of pious Godfrey. Him I trust. The whole world knows how good he is, how just. Do you unto that captain show my way, if, as it seems, your soul is good and kind? And he, It's fitting that one brother play your guide to another, and your business mind. Beautiful maid, you shall not plead in vain, and me not powerless in his grace you'll find. What boon you please you'll gain, and without fail, to which his sceptre or my sword avail. Silent, he leads where champions all about, far from the crowd, great Bouillon sits apart. She made a reverent curtsy, then, in doubt, paused, shamefaced, while her lips seemed loath to part. But at that bashful blush, that timid pout, the great warrior's mild cheer makes her take heart, and she her cunning tale at last unpens, in tones whose sweetness chains up every sense. Invincible prince, she says, whose great name has bedecked its wings with ornaments so clear, that the realms you crush and win in war surpass in fame all other realms that others fear, everywhere is your valour known. And as even in your foes it grows beloved and dear, so even your foes it renders unafraid to seek you out and to implore its aid. And I, born to that foreign faith which you have caused to stoop and now seek to consume, to win my throne back for assistance sue, my parents' royal sceptre to resume. And where another might ask kindred to beat back fierce aliens and to prevent his doom, I here, since my own blood has ceased to feel all pity, must invoke a foeman's steel. On you I call, in you I hope. The height from which I thrust you can alone restore. Your strong right hand is no less known for might to lift men up as cast them to the floor, no less in fame for mercy takes delight than in its triumphs over foes. Before from countless others you have seized the throne, be it your fame now to win back my own. But should our differing faith move you to pay less heed, perhaps, to this my honest prayer, my sure faith is your kindness is my stay. All truth must fail if I'm in error there. Now by that God who is Jove to all, I say, no cause more just could ever be your care. So hear me out, that you may know complete my own mishaps and other men's deceit. I'm daughter to Arbelan, him who reigned in fair Damascus, born to low degree, fair Chariclia's hand he wooed and gained, who on him pleased to found her dynasty. She died, lay lifeless even as I strained to quit her womb at my nativity, and the same fateful day unto the earth returned her body that to mine gave birth. But scarcely had that day's first lustral date since she laid down her fleshly veil been past, when my dear father, yielding to his fate, perhaps in heaven to join her, breathed his last, leaving all care of me and of the state to his brother, whom he loved with zeal so vast that, if in mortal breast dwell piety, it should have guaranteed his loyalty. When that man did my guardianship begin, he seemed on all my good so wholly bent, in spotless faith, paternal love, and in a boundless piety preeminent, perhaps he hid malignity and sin under a cloak of opposite intent. Perhaps all was as yet and sincerely done, because he planned my marriage to his son. I grew, his son grew, but the noble ways of chivalry or its skills he never learned. Nothing refined or rare could draw his praise, and no aims lofty unto which he turned. The soul his foul shape hid was commonplace, and greedy longings in his proud heart burned. Vulgar his acts, and crude were his devices, himself alone his equal in his vices. Now my good guardian to this paragon had planned to yoke me in the wedded state, to make him of my bed and of my throne a mate. He said so plainly. Early and late his words, his reasons, and his lies were sown to gain the bliss he dared anticipate. But I would yield no promise, and although he pressed me hard, was silent or said no. At last he parted with a gloomy face, through which his wicked heart shone all too plain. Too well my fancy on his brow could trace the history of all my future pain. From then on did my nightly slumbers race with troubled dreams and ghosts that on my brain by fatal horror I could not oppose, impressed explicit omens of my woes. Often my mother's shade appeared to me, pale image, making sorrowful display, far different, from hers I once did see depicted elsewhere on a happier day. Flee, child, she cried, from wretched murder flee, that looms above you even now. Away! I see the poison mixed, I see the sword raised to undo you by the tyrant lord. Woe's me! What boots it that within my heart such signs of present danger should appear, since in my tender youth I lacked the arts to form a plan, uncertain and in fear? To flee, to take up willing exile, start naked, unfurnished from my native sphere, seemed woe enough to make me think it wise to close, where I first opened them, my eyes. I feared my death, but lacked the will to strive, who would believe it, from that death to flee? Yet feared to show my fear, lest I contrive thereby to speed the hour of death for me. Thus restless, I, distraught and scarce alive, dragged out my days in endless misery, like one who hears each ticking second call the axe that on his naked neck must fall. In this my state, be it some chance remained, my friend, or saved me for what worse fate planned, one courtier, whom the king my father trained from earliest childhood, made me understand that the time of death the tyrant had ordained to rid himself of me was close at hand, whose cruelty he stood pledged now to obey, ordered to poison me that very day. He added that my life had so decayed that one thing only could prolong it, flight, and he, since nowhere else I hoped for aid, offered himself as my defending knight, and such warm comfort in his words displayed that the bit of fear no longer checked my sprite from trusting him to lead me through blind air, and fleeing home and uncle in his care. There came a night of more than common gloom, whose friendly shadows veiled us from the sky, when, by two handmaids tended, in my doom my picked companions, I set out to fly. My native city's walls behind did loom, and I turned back my eyes, tears brimming high. That glimpse of home that they from thence did take in parting could not their great hunger slake. My eyes and mind sped back along the road, and yet my feet moved onward all the more, even as fierce and sudden wind shocks goad a ship away from the beloved shore. All night and all the following day we rode through trackless wastes where none had trod before. Then in a keep at last we found repose that at my kingdom's farthest limit rose. Orontes' castle this, Orontes he, who, plucking me from danger, was my guide. But now, no sooner did the vile king see that I had fled his deadly snares, beside himself with wrath, he issued a decree, his own misdeed the trumped-up charge supplied, outlawing both of us for that vile sin that he with me had meant to wallow in. He said I had won Orontes' foul consent by bribes to mingle poison in his drink, that I might know after his life was spent no law to check all I might act or think, and would, left free to my lascivious bent, my body with 1,000 lovers link. Ah, let God's fire at once on me descend, blessed chastity, ere I your laws offend. That beast's voracious hunger for my gold, joined with his yearning for my guiltless blood, pained me indeed, but he dealt pain untold, dragging my unstained honour through the mud. The wicked man then spun such artful lies, cajoled so well, nipped all resistance in the bud, that the town, confused by doubts and false alarms, in my defence dared not rise up in arms. Nor, though he now sits on my throne, his face resplendent 'neath my regal crown, does he end my great wrongs therefore and my disgrace. So sharply goads him his ferocity. He threatens to burn Orontes in his place, unless of his own will he shackles me. To me, alas, and all who me espouse, not merely war, but massacre he vows. So must he act, says he, for so he will cleanse from his countenance the blush of shame, and make all well that my disgrace makes ill, the honour of my blood, the royal name. But fear is his true reason, for he still covets my sceptre and my rightful claim. His reign was founded on my fall alone, only my ruin firmly props his throne. That end, indeed, will crown his fell desire, the tyrant's long since firmly fixed intent, and then my blood will quench his raging fire, unquenched by all the tears of my lament, if you do not forbid it. Help me, sire, me, wretched maiden, orphaned, innocent. O may, poured at your feet, these tears of sorrow move you, lest I pour forth my blood tomorrow. By these your feet that must tread down all spite and arrogance, this hand that must maintain justice, by your high triumphs, by that holy sight, source of your strength and goal toward which you strain, grant my request, you only have that might, and save my life even as you save my reign. Have pity, though no pity can avail with you, I know, if right and reason fail. You, whom heaven grants ye made his fate, both to will justice and what's just to do, to save for me my life, for you my state, it's yours if I regain it, lies in you. Give me out of this multitude so great your mightiest heroes 10 to lead. Those few, with my loyal people and the city's best, will serve to lift me back into my nest. Indeed, one of my peers, whose trusted hand now holds the key of a secret postern, vows to open it by night and lead our band to the palace gates, if only I can rouse your aid. For him, that aid, you understand, however small, with greater hope endows than if from elsewhere a huge army came, so much he esteems your banners, your mere name. This said, she ceases and awaits reply, her silence eloquent, itself a prayer. And Godfrey's mind, torn between nay and a, in dubious thought seems hovering in mid-air. Barbarian guile, he fears, knows that to rely on faith in faithless pagans is a snare. And yet he feels the pitying passion start, for pity never sleeps in noble heart. And not his wonted inborn ruth alone would gladly deem her worth his grace to gain. Utility conspires to make him own that in Damascus's realm someone should reign who might, obliged to him, prove the more prone to make the roads for his endeavours plain, keep him with troops and arms and gold supplied against the Egyptians and all upon their side. While thus he hesitates, his keen gaze bent upon the earth, revolving each surmise, the lady fixes hers on him, intent, observes his features, hangs upon his eyes. And when she feels too much delay is spent in his reply, she fears it and she sighs. But he, at last, refusing her request, these mild and courteous words to her addressed. If in God's cause, for he it is who calls, our swords were not engaged here, well you might base hope on them, whatever else befalls, for help and not mere pity in your plight. But these his flocks, these his dishonoured walls we must first free. And it would not be right if now, by lessening a united force, we risked impeding our victory's course. Firmly I promise, and for surety take here my solemn word and never fear, as soon as from their shameful yoke we free these walls so holy and to heaven so dear, to render back your stolen sovereignty will make, as pity prompts us, our first care. But pity now would piety undo, if first which we did not give to God his due. At this the princess dropped her lids, and for a space stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the ground, then raised them, brimming dew, while her white face too well expressed the grief in which they drowned. Was ever a wretch whom heaven denied all grace to a life as harsh, as miserably bound as mine? Behold, great hearts and natures falter sooner than fate as hard as mine will alter. No hope remains. Vainly I grieve. Should I, since prayers to sway the human heart grow frail, chase hopes that yours not heeding them, they'll be against a wicked tyrant's heart of more avail? Though I'll not charge you with inclemency to let my call for easy favour fail, yet I charge heaven, for thence my woes proceed, with making you hard-hearted in your creed. And yet not you, sir, not your generous will, but destiny denies my present aid. Cruel doom, pitiless, fatal doom, go spill at once this hateful life you've made. Fate dealt to me, alack, a lesser ill to make in youth's first flower my parents fade, than to make you look elsewhere, while my life, my kingdom gone, falls victim to the knife. What then? Not honour's law, nor my great zeal to safeguard mine lets me here tarry long. With whom should I seek shelter? Where conceal? Where refuge find against the tyrant strong? No place so dark that gold will not reveal. Ye, open wide. Why linger in my wrong? I see my death, vainly I flee it, and why should I not go meet it by my hand? Here she falls silent. All men might perceive her face display the scorn of a great queen. Turning her foot, she makes as if to leave, anger and sorrow in her every mien. But sobs burst from her lips without reprieve, unchecked, as anger prompts or sorrow keen, and sunlit tears that trickle on the girl's fair face seem crystal beads or pearls. Her cheeks, down which these lively teardrops flow, sprinkling her gown's fringe, make a glow as fair as crimson flowers with white buds mingled glow when the showers of dew refresh them. In the air of earliest dawn, unto the merry breeze they open out, their secret bosoms bare, and seeing them and pleased with them, the morn readies the tresses that they shall adorn. But the elixir from her brimming spheres makes precious her fair cheeks and bosom, and starts a mighty blaze that secretly appears in 1,000 breasts, and there its heat imparts. O wonder-worker love, who extracts from tears hot sparks, and who with water kindles hearts! As nature's master has he long been known, but in her nature he transcends his own. This feigned lament makes many a bosom weak, with unfeigned tears, and opens hearts wide. Each in his soul hears her affliction speak. If Godfrey's grace to her be now denied, a rabid tigress nursed him, a harsh beak on cold Alps bore him, or some senseless tide that crashes into foam upon the main, cruel to crush such beauty with disdain. But Eustace in his youth, by more acute fires of pity and of love controlled, while all the others whisper or are mute, steps to the fore and speaks out loud and bold. My brother and my lord, too resolute your thoughts to their original purpose hold, if, when we all united yearn and pray, they cannot bend a little or give way. I don't say that the chiefs appointed here as the commanders of the rank and file should budge from the beleaguered wall, or veer from their appointed offices meanwhile, but from us, this was of adventurers, whose sphere knows no particular charge of rank or style, less bound by protocol than other men, you might well spare to do me justice 10. Surely not truant to God's service toils the man who champions maiden innocence, and dear to heaven surely are those spoils he from slain tyrants to the altar sends. Even if I thought that, in our present broil, this quest might not much profit our defence, my duty moves me, chivalry's express canon to aid all damsels in distress. Ah, God forbid it should be said in France, or wheresoever men praise courtesy, that risk or travail made us look askance at a just cause of such integrity. If so, here I lay down helmet and lance, here I ungird my sword, rather than be unworthy of my steed, unfit to fight, a mere usurper of the name of knight. So speaks he, and in clear-voiced unison all of his company with him agrees, calls good and apt all he demands be done. They ring the captain, pressing him with pleas. I yield, he said at last, and I am won to the course that your united will decrees. She here gains, if you deem fit, her entire boon by your words, though not by my desire. Yet, if to Godfrey you can still concede a little credit, moderate your heat. He says no more, and no more do they need, since what he grants has made their bliss complete. Beauty in tears, when will it not succeed? or speech on an amorous tongue meltingly sweet. For from her lovely lips fall golden chains with which she binds all hearers and constrains. So Eustace calls her back and tells her, "Now, fair damsel, you may end your sorrow, for soon shall such succour come from us, I vow, that only fear in you could ask for more." Then did Armida smooth her clouded brow, and to her smile such splendour did restore, enamoured with it grew the very skies, while with her gossamer veil she dried her eyes. She showered them in dulcet tones, and dear with thanks for all the favours on their part. "For ever," said she, "would the world and sphere their fame, for ever etched inside her heart." And what her tongue could not express, her cheer expressed with the mute eloquence of art. So well her mind her outward semblance feigned, that none suspected what her thoughts contained. And now, since she sees smiling fortune greet this great commencement of her wiles, she starts, before her plot can weaken, to complete her criminal design upon their hearts, to gain by her fair looks and gestures sweet more than Medea or Circe by their arts. Out of her siren throat such music creeps, that the most watchful mind is lulled and sleeps. She uses every female trick that might entangle a new lover in her net, but not to all, nor always, puts on quite the same face. Now plays loose, now hard to get, now guards, turned inward modestly, her sight, now makes it wander, lecherous and wet, now pricks the spur, now pulls upon the bridle, as they in lust seem either quick or idle. If she sees one who from her love draws back his soul, or who in shyness seeks defence, she smiles. A planet blazing in its track, her eye with joy irradiates all his sense. So pricks she his desire by fear made slack, turns all his dubious hope to confidence, and by new kindling amorous longing glow, quite melts the ice that fear and doubt made grow. With another, then, who boldly overreaches, led by that blind, foolhardy king, love's bound, she scants her fair gaze and her loving speeches, inspires fear and reverence profound. Yet in the scorn that her proud visage teaches, a glimmering ray of pity too is found. Thus he becomes not desperate, though in fears, the more enmeshed, the prouder she appears. Sometimes a short way off from them she stands, and gathers all her features and her frown in one great mask of grief, when in her glance wild woe wells upward, quickly forced back down. And with her, by these weeping arts, she enchants many a simple soul in tears to drown, tempering her darts of love in pity's flame. Weapons thus hardened put all hearts to shame. Then, as if fleeing such thoughts, desperate to rouse new hope within herself, she guides back to her swains her steps and words, a great joy painted on her face, while nothing hides her eyes that, like a double sun, dilate in one bright glance, one heavenly smile that glides over those clouds of sorrow, dark and dense, that she herself has raised to wound their sense. But as she sweetly speaks and sweetly smiles, and makes their spirits drunk with double pleasure, as if she tore their souls out, she beguiles men never used to joys so out of measure. Cruel love, you bear our death in murderous vials, filled now with gall, now with your honeyed treasure, equally fatal all that you ensure, whether it be the sickness or the cure. In such contrary humours, ice and fire, laughter and tears, twixt fear and hope she makes all anxious where they stand, and does not tire of her false game. If any undertakes, trembling and weak, to speak of pains, comes nigh her and dares hint she alone can soothe his aches, she, like a country lass in love untried, seems not to hear his whole soul open wide. Or else, her eyes in modesty kept low, she decks herself with chastity's pale scorn, and alters with a hint of frost or snow the roses that her lovely face adorn. Even as at first birth the new dawn will glow in the coolest hours of the earliest morn, so disdain's blush in her fresh blush of shame confounds itself and mingles with the same. But soon, as by his acts she notes some man who of inflamed desire reveals a clue, She runs, she flees, anywhere rather than there he will speak, then bids him speak anew. And all day long she tires his every plan, then, dashing all his hopes, bids him adieu. So he remains the hunter doomed to lose what night the track of quarry he pursues. Such were the arts by means of which untold thousands of souls she lures, and by such tools, or rather by such weapons, she gains hold of all the bond slaves whom love's power rules. What marvel then if once Achilles bold and Hercules and Theseus proved love's fools, since now even he who girt on Jesus' sword toils in the shackles of that wayward lord? While thus the treacherous Armida lures the knights to be her lovers, not content with the promised 10 among her paramours, but of the thrall of others confident, Godfrey his way in which of all these wooers should take the doubtful quest, and the descent among so many adventurers, all great, all equally eager, makes him hesitate. But he with wise foresight at last decreed that they among themselves elect at will a leader great-souled Dudon to succeed, who then might pick, according to his skill, men for the task. Thus none of them could plead his prejudice in the choice and take it ill, and thus, as reason bade, he let them see how much he prized their splendid company. Therefore he calls them to him and declares, "My views on this you have already heard, which, rather than to spurn the lady's prayers, was in good time to aid and to pledge our word. I once more urge this now. You would ease my cares if, after all, our wills at last concurred. For in a world so mutable and blind, it's often constancy to change one's mind. But if you still think that it ill accords with your high worth to shun this peril, and your generous daring verily, my lords, scorns all too cautious counsel, I'll not stand against your will to make you sheathe your swords. Nor shall I what I've granted countermand. But let my power over you, as is right, be an easy one, my bridle loose and light. I therefore rest, whether you stay or go, content even as your pleasure may decide. But first do you for your slain duke, I pray, choose a successor. Him appoint your guide, to name 10 from your number as he may, yet let him by the number 10 abide, for I reserve the last word touching this. In all else let the mastery be his." And all this time to fetch her promised aid, unflaggingly the loose enchantress pressed. By day she sued and cunningly essayed, with all her art, wit, beauty at their best. But when the night its inky cloak displayed, and shut the gates of daylight in the west, with 2 each of her guards and maids she went retiring to the shelter of her tent. But though she was past mistress of deceit, knew gentle ways and courtly tricks galore, and though she walked in beauty so complete that none before or since was graced with more, by which she now had cast down in defeat the strongest chiefs to dote and to adore, yet to tempt the reverend Godfrey to love's feast her flattering wiles availed not in the least. In vain she tries to lure him and to draw him on by carnal sweets to love's delight. But, like a sated bird, sensing a flaw when fowlers offering food call him to alight, he, full fed, recks the world's joyous not a straw, but heavenward pursues his pilgrim flight. And though false love's snares ever and again lime his high path, he renders them all vain. For no impediment turns his holy mind from a path blazed for him by his God. She tried 1,000 arts, disguises of each kind, and like some modern Proteus sought his side, and love, where love most coldly sleeps, would find himself awake, if touched by her or eyed. Yet he, by the grace of heaven, seems exempt. Frustrated, she abandons the attempt. She, gorgeous dame, who thinks each chastest heart must at one flutter of her eyelash burn, Ah, how her haughtiness and pomp now smart! How rage and wonder in her breast now churn! Soon she resolves upon some other part of less stalwart defence her forced to turn, even as a general, battle spent, will yield unconquerable ground and shift the field. But no less proof against her weapon's fire was Tancred's heart, for in his case his breast heaves with another dear desire, and no new flame can there command a space. For as one poison causes to expire another, one love blocks another's place. Only these two escape her. Little or much, all the rest burn at her flame's bewitching touch. And she, though grieved that all her tricks and skill fall short of a complete success, somewhat consoles herself to think that at her will she such a crowd of noble knights has got. These now, ere anyone should think it ill, she means to lead off to a safer spot, and there to shackle them with other chains than those with which she now their souls constrains. And since the term set by the captain to provide the promised aid was up, she went humbly to him once more to plead and sue. "My lord," she says, "the due date is now spent, and if by chance the wicked tyrant knew that to seek help from you was my intent, he soon would rally his defensive force, and not so smoothly then would run our course. Therefore, before rumour's uncertain tongue, or the sure tongues of spies give all away, in pity choose those picked few from among your best men, let them ride with me to-day. For unless heaven winks at mortal wrong and sleeps when innocence is made a prey, I shall regain my crown to place my land in peace and war forever at your command." These were her words. The captain to her plea concedes what he could scarce deny, although, she being so eager for departure, he knows that himself must choose her men, and oh, they all with wondrous importunity demand among the chosen 10 to go, and competition which among them stirred makes each the more peremptory to be heard. She, well observing all their hearts laid bare, hits, seeing this, upon a novel tack, and rakes their sides up with a wicked fear of jealousy's whips and pricks. Where such arts lack, she knows, love will become a tame affair, and in the end grow old and fat and slack, just as a courser runs with lagging speed in a track where none pursue him or precede. And she so cunningly her speeches can wheedle, and glances and sweet smiles can steer, that each of them envies each other man, or knows the difference between hope and fear. Besotted thus, her crew of lovers run, goaded to madness by her lying cheer, helplessly after her. None thought it shame. In vain their captain said they were to blame. He, who in equal measure seeks to please all of the parties and to none inclines, though now with growing shame and wrath he sees his knight's great folly and thereat repines, since he still hears them obstinate in their pleas, to guard the peace a novel task assigns. "Mark all your names on lots," he says, "and place them in an urn. Let chance adjudge your case." Soon everybody's name is scribbled on a slip, pitched in an urn and tossed. Somebody draws a lot at random, and the first thus drawn Artemidoros' Count Pembroke's was. He heard them read out Jared's name anon, and after him the name of Wenceslas who, so wise not long ago, now baby talks, a balding, grey-beard beau. How all their faces shone, how their eyes gleamed, and their hearts overflowing happiness, those first 3 chosen ones, who fortune seemed in their great enterprise of love to bless, and all whose names the urn still held now dreamed with anxious, jealous hearts of their success, hanging with wild suspense upon the lips that read out names of others from the slips. Guasco was fourth, Ridolfo next, and then, after Ridolfo, Aldric. Then chance picked William of Roussillon from the men, Bavarian Everard, and Henry of France. Apostate Rambaud was last of the 10, who soon as for to Jesus would advance. Can love do this? Thus is the count complete, debarring all the others who compete. Enflamed with jealous rage, these others spew abuse at tyrant fortune. They decry her, and blame you, love, for thus consenting to her rule in things that you should rule entire. But since men, as by instinct, ever do whatever is most forbid to their desire, many in fortune's spite are at the mark at dusk to trail the lady after dark. They swear to follow her in sun or shade, for aye to risk their lives to fight for her. Scant her reply, but in her brief words played, and her sweet sighs, a hint she might concur. And now to one she, now to another made moan that abroad she must without him stir. Meanwhile the 10 had finished arming, and, awaiting Godfrey's congé, took their stand. He wisely warns each to be mindful of the fickle faith of pagans, the low price of pledges from them, and that to rise above their wiles and tricks only great skills suffice. But his words are scattered to the wind, for love disdains to act on a sane man's advice. At last he bids good speed. Hot to be gone, the damsel will not even wait for dawn. She leaves a conqueror, and like captives brings these rivals in a triumph in her train, leaving her crowd of other loves, whom stings a sense of infinite distress and pain. But when night came, wafting beneath its wings silence and dreams that idle flit and feign, in secret love their guide, over hill and dale, many of these pursued Armida's trail. Eustace is first in chase, can hardly bide for the dark that night brings with her, and in haste he sets out on a path where a blind guide lures him to roam a blind and gloomy waste. All through the warm and still night did he ride, but when the kindly day dawned in the east, Armida and her convoy came in sight at a little town, their lodging for the night. He rushes towards her, and by his device Rimbaud knows him at once, and shouts to inquire what he is seeking there, and he replies, "Like you, to aid Armida I aspire, and I, if she disdains not, will suffice to serve no worse than you as her true squire." Retorts the other, "Pray, what power approves you for that honour?" And he fires back, Love chose me, fortune you. Now, of us two, whom think you chosen by a better chooser?" Then Rimbaud said, "Such dubious claims won't do, useless contrivances of a bad loser. You cannot mix with this legitimate crew who serve the royal maiden. You abuse her, you dastard knave." "And who," replies the youth crossly, "is here to say me nay forsooth?" "I say so to your face," the other cried, and at these words made ready for attack. With equal heat his opposite defied his heat, lost in a hatred just as black. But their soul's tyrant intervened to ride between them in their wrath and hold them back. To one she said, "For heaven's sake, don't complain if I a champion, you a comrade gain. If you love me, and with my safety, why deprive me of new aid in my great need?" To the other says she, "Timely you draw nigh, my life's and honour's welcome shield. Indeed, reason forbids, nor shall it be that I scorn such good company, and of rank so high." So says she. By and by along the way a number of new knights catch up and stay. This one joins her from here, that one from there, and neither knows the other, how they stare and scowl. She gladly greets all who appear, and makes them her great joy and comfort share. But soon as that night's darkling shadows clear, Godfrey of their departure grows aware, and in his mind, prophetic of their bane, looms a great grief born of some future pain. He sets out on uncertain paths and long, and soon hears hoof-beats ever nearer, and at last out of a narrow pass there flung a man, a courier by his look. His hand held a lithe whip, and from his shoulders hung a great horn in the fashion of our land. Tancred inquired, hailing him, what track thence to the Christian camp would lead him back. He answered in Italian, "Thither I, on quick dispatch from Bohemond, am bound." Tancred goes with him, thinking him sent by his famous uncle, and his false tale sound. Ere long a foul, unwholesome lake they nigh, with swamp-like moat girding a castle round, at the hour when the sun appears to leap down to vastly den of night and sleep. Arrived the courier straight his horn does wind, and look, a drawbridge is let down apace. If you're a Latin, here your lodging find, he says, until the sun resumes his rays. For the pagans, less than 3 days since, resigned to conquest by Cosensus, count this place. The knight surveys the pile, which sight and art render impregnable in every part. Though somewhat he suspects that such a strong castle might hide entrapment or betrayal, yet of all mortal peril he so long has lost all fear, he will not now grow pale, since where his will or fate leads him, no wrong against his strong arm can, he thinks, prevail. Though care for the other comfort he did vow makes him averse to face a new test now. Hence, as he fronts the keep in a meadow where the sweeping causeway opens out and ends, he somewhat slows his pace, sensing a snare in the welcome that his would-be guide extends. On the bridge, meanwhile, with fierce and scornful air, an armoured knight appeared, and he who from thence, his right fist brandishing a naked blade, with cruel menace this defiance made. O you, who, led by fortune or your will, have set foot in Armida's fatal lands, think not of flight, but straight your weapons spill, and into shackles thrust your caitiff hands. Seek not to cross her guarded threshold till you bow to the law that binds her warrior bands, nor ever hope to see the sky once more, though years roll past and all your locks turn hoar, unless you swear to join her men and ride against whoever fights in Jesus' name. Tancred more closely than the speaker eyed. His accent and his shield's device proclaim Gascon Rimbaud, who by Armida's side had left the camp and for her sake became a pagan, and now championed with his sword the region's wicked custom and abhorred. With holy anger crimsoning his face, the pious knight replied, "Foul felon, I am Tancred, ever ready to embrace the sword as Christ's defender, to defy and to strike down his rebels, by his grace, as your own fate shall now exemplify. For to chastise you this hand has been sent, of heaven's wrath the chosen instrument." All colour draining from his troubled brow, the impious warrior heard the glorious name. Yet, pushing back his fear, he said, "How now is it to leave a corpse behind you came? Wretch, here your might must fail, your proud head bow and fall beneath my sword, and I'll make game to send it as a gift to your French kin, unless I'm not the man I've always been." So said the renegade. And since day's light was spent and almost nothing could be seen, at once 1,000 torches, clear and bright, suffused the region with a golden sheen. The castle glows as on a festive night in a gilded theatre some lofty scene, and, perched on high, Armida sits at ease, hid where, though unseen, she both hears and sees. The great-souled hero, meanwhile, ready made his arms and courage for the bitter fray, nor on his weary courser mounted stayed, seeing his foe on foot advance his way. Behind his shield that foe comes, helmeted, his naked falchion poised to strike and slay. Fiercely the prince to meet his blows sets out, threats in her eyes and terror in his shout. The one in great sweeps turns his steps, alert, his sword now lunging and now feigning blows. The other, though his limbs feel tired and hurt, are all resolute, moves quickly to the close, and when Rimbaud steps back, in a sudden spurt of startling speed, he, hurtling forward, goes and charges and pursues, and often tries a lightning upthrust, aiming for the eyes. But most of all he fiercely strikes those parts where nature's vital powers most inhere, and a proud menace with each wound imparts, blows joined to threats and injury to fear. With agile limbs the nimble Gascon darts from every blow, jumping how there, now here, and now his shield and now his sword lifts high to turn the onslaught of his foe awry. But he is not so quick in his defence that the other is not quicken in attack. His shield already split, that onslaught rends helmet and harness, with his gore splashed black, and no blow from his enemy descends, but makes a wound, and he with fear grows slack, as his heart feels at once the sharp tooth of fury, of shame, of conscience, and of love. He resolves at last upon one desperate chance to risk his all in battle and conclude. He hurls away his shield, and with both hands clutches his sword, which still has drunk no blood, rushes his foe, and looming near him, lands a crushing blow. No blade could have withstood its impact, and with grievous injury it wounds the left thigh just above the knee. A second buffet smites his mighty brow, the helmet clanging with it like a bell. Though it can't pierce the crest, it makes him bow and reel and shake as if beneath a spell. Crimson with rage the prince's cheeks grow now, his eyes flash fire, and under veins that swell, his flaming glances issue, while beneath resounds the furious grinding of his teeth. The pagan renegade cannot sustain even the gaze of that fierce countenance. He fears the whistling steel, his every vein freezes to feel it toward his heart advance. He avoids the stroke. It falls, but falls in vain on an abutment of the bridge. A glance. White sparks and bits of rubble skyward start, and icy chill invades the traitor's heart. To the bridge he ran then, and only in flight for any hope of safety he relied. But Tancred followed, and, ready to smite, was at his back, pressing him stride for stride, when lo, help from on high to the wretch, all light of torches ceased, and of all stars beside, and to blind night, beneath a sky bereft, no ray, not even the pale moon's, was left. The night's abyss, and through enchantment's spell the victor cannot follow him nor see. What's next him or ahead he cannot tell, and with slow steps proceeds, and doubtfully but stumbles through a hidden door pell-mell, nor knows he has entered anywhere till he hears at his back a gate shut with a boom, and finds himself caged up in murk and gloom. Even as an eel whereby Camacchio's side our sea creates a marsh, straining to win escape from the resistless, cruel tide, some placid bay or shoal to shelter in, finds he himself has hurled himself inside a boggy jail, not can turn back, that gin by admirable skill, being open ever but to inward traffic, but departing ever. So Tancred now, whoever had designed or raised up his uncanny prison, went willingly in and found himself confined in a den no man leaves by his own intent. Groping, he pounded at the gate, purblind, but all for nothing were his labour spent. Meanwhile, he heard a voice that cried, "In vain, Armida's prayer you seek to leave again. Here you, fear not to die yet, shall drag out, entombed in living death, your days and years." Making no answer then, the warrior stout deep in his heart penned up his groans and tears, and love and fortune inwardly did flout, and his own folly, and that stranger's snares, and sometimes in unspoken words says he, "An easy loss is a loss of sun to me, but of a brighter, sweeter sun the sight I, wretch, now lose, nor know if ever I regain the region where its amorous light brings peace to my poor soul before I die." Recalling Argand, then, his mind grows quite distraught. "I have," he says, "let honour fly," and he with reason heaps on scorn and blame. "Oh, my great guilt! Oh, my eternal shame!" And since he soon had recognized that crew who had helped him thus to stem the heathen tide, as that of those most valued warriors who had earlier chased after their treacherous guide, Tancred among them, who, a prisoner too, in false Armida's fortress had been tied, he calls them, in the hermit's sight alone, and of a few wise men before his throne, and asks them, "Pray, can someone here impart to me the ways of your brief wandering course, and how you later, to relieve our smart in such great need, could bring such welcome force?" Ashamed they hung their heads, for in each heart the slightest fault wrought bitterest remorse. At last the illustrious son of Britain's king looked up and broke his silence, sorrowing. "Finding our lots left luckless in the ewer, we stole away, each on his own, to chase, I don't deny it, a deceitful lure of love and of a lovely treacherous face. She drew us on through twisted paths obscure, squabbling, each jealous of the other's place. Each little word from her, each glance, too late I see it now, but nursed our lust and hate. At last we came where long ago the fire in flakes of swelling flame fell from the sky, and crimes unnatural, offences dire of a folk grown hard in sin, avenged thereby. The land was fertile once, a kindly shire, but now it forms a tepid, sulphurous dye, a sterile lake. All shores its slow waves drench, exude through thickening air a dreadful stench. Nothing, however heavy, in this still swamp finds its bottom, if upon it thrown. Like ashwood and light pine, a body will bob on its waves, ye iron and hard stone. In it a castle stands upon a hill, with access by one narrow bridge alone. There she brought us, and by uncanny art that place is fair, and smiles in every part. And there the breeze is soft, pure is the sky, glad are the trees and meadows, sweet the waves, and in a pleasant myrtle bower near by a little stream of fountain's margins laves. Over the lap of leaves soft murmurs ply, raining repose into its verdant caves, and the sweet birds sing. I shall leave untold the wonders there in marble and in gold. Upon the grassy bank in densest shade, close to the sound of crystal waters, we, a table proud with ornate bowls sore laid, crowded with cates of dearest rarity. All that each season yields was here displayed, all fruit of earth and poison of the sea, and all that art decocts. And with lithe grace 100 fair maids vied to serve each place. With lovely smiles and dulcet speeches she sweetens a food else fatal and malign. Then, while placed round her table, all made free to quaff in long draughts long oblivion's wine, she rose and cried, "Now wait," and presently came back with a face less tranquil and benign. A slim wand in her right hand, she proceeds to raise a book with her left and softly reads. The sorceress reads. I feel my thought and will change my life, my home, and all the rest. New modes of thought, strange power, seize me till I leap into the waves, dive down, possessed. Both legs, I know not how, draw in and fill then one arm, then the other one, my breast. I stretch and shrink, scales cover me, I swish lithe fins, and of a man I'm made a fish. Soon each of all the others slithered too, transformed like me to a quicksilver crowd. What then became of me, what then I knew, seems now a phantom in a flickering cloud. At last it pleased her to restore us to our own forms, but, by fear and wonder cowed, we stood struck dumb and grieving, while she thus, black gloom in all her glances, spoke to us. Lo, now you know my power, she says, and now know how wholly in my hands your fortunes lie. My whim determines which of you, laid low, lose in eternal chains his gracious sky, which will turn bird and which take root below, to sprout in earth's womb, or to petrify into a rock, or melt into a spring, or shaggy-browed become some beastly thing. But know you can escape my bitter hate, if to my sovereign pleasure you will yield, turn pagan, and in service to our state against foul Bouillon use both sword and shield. One sole man, Rimbaud, takes her vile pact's bait, all else refused, with horror unconcealed. Us, since no least defence availed, she cast chained in a hole where never sun's ray passed. At that same castle then by chance arrives Tancred, and he too is a prisoner made. Yet the false sorceress kept us there in gyves but briefly. Soon, as I surmise, an aid sent by Damascus' tyrant lord contrives to make that foul dame yield us. She obeyed, and he, with 100 armed guards, moved to bring us, helpless, chained, a gift to Egypt's king. Thus we were journeying thence, and as heaven's high providence ever will the world's jar settle, the good Rinaldo, he who far and nigh exalts his glory with surpassing fettle, meets us there and assaults our guards to try their might and to prove on them his vaunted mettle. He slays them, triumphs, and soon makes us don their armour, which had earlier been our own. I saw him, these men saw him. Yea, his hand that was reached out for ours, his voice we heard. He lives. The tale that terrifies this land is a false rumour, and an idle word. 3 days before this day he left us, and, escorted only by pilgrim, spurred away from us toward Antioch, having first cast off his arms, all blood-stained, hacked, and burst. Then he resumed. The works and treacheries wrought by false Armida you both know in part, how she came to the camp, and how she brought so many knights to stray, laid by her art. You know, too, how the faithless hostess caught these knights, and in hard fetters made them smart, and sent them under guard to Gaza then, when on their way they were set free again. Now I'll relate to you what next occurred, a true account you have not heard before. After the wicked sorceress had word her prey, seized with such art, was free once more, she bit both hands for grief, and cried out, stirred by furious rage burning in every pore, "Ah, never shall he boast that he could free so many of my prisoners from me. Though he freed the rest, let him now be my slave, and in their stead suffer long grief and pain. No, even that is not enough. I crave that they should all feel universal bane." Discoursing thus within her mind, she gave rein to the treacherous scheme hatched in her brain. She hastened where Rinaldo's victor hand smote and in part destroyed her warrior band. He, having left his armour in that spot, upon his back a pagan's arms had placed, meaning perhaps to go disguised, and not to blaze in gear so famous and so graced. That armour now the witch snatched up and brought where a dead man lay, and in its mail encased the corpse, and laid it by a river's side, where she foresaw a troop of Franks were tried. Such foresight she could easily command, whose 1,000 spies were roaming all about, and from the camp of the Crusader band brought news of who rode in and who rode out. And she, moreover, often, hand in hand, conversed with demons of the hellish rout. The spot, then, where she puts that body will be opportune, she knows, to her false skill. A very cunning squire not far away she bade to wait, in shepherd's garb arrayed, and gave him orders what to do and say, all lies and utter sham, and he obeyed. He talked with your men, and from his mouth they received suspicion's seed that, ripening, stayed lodged in their bosoms, fed by hate, and bore the fruit of mutiny and civil war. For, as had been her plan, it was believed that Bouillon somehow had Rinaldo killed, though that suspicion was so ill conceived that by the first true tidings it was stilled. Even so, by false Armida's guile deceived, all thought as I now say, just as she willed. Now you shall also hear how she pursued Rinaldo afterwards, and what ensued. Like a sly huntress now, Armida lurks for Rinaldo at the ford. That man of war comes where a small branch of Orontes forks to form an isle, then joins the stream once more, and finds a column rising there that marks the landing where a boat rides near the shore. Eyes fixed upon its marble, white and rare, he reads the golden letters graven there. O thou, whoever thou be, whose wandering way desire or chance guides to this riverside, nor west nor east more marvels can display than those that on this little island hide, cross over then, and see. Without delay, the heedless youth decides to cross the tide, and since the boat holds no weight but his own, leaves his 2 squires and rows across alone. Arrived, avid and fancy-free, he takes a closer view, but nothing meets his sight save caverns, fountains, flowers, trees, and brakes. He fears he is mocked by some mischievous sprite, yet seems the place so pleasant that it makes him pause and sit, till, yielding to delight, unhelmeting his brow, he takes his ease in the sweet breathing of the placid breeze. Meanwhile he hears the river murmuring with a new sound. His eyes roam to the place, and in mid-stream make out a wave-like thing, turning, returning on itself with watery grace, and in it strands of blonde hair eddying. And there a maiden rises up, first face, then shoulders, then white breasts, till she reveals her whole shape to the place that shame conceals. So on a stage at night, stately and slow, some dimful goddess floats above the scene. This girl, though a mere magic wraith, and no siren, it seems like those in old days seen making their home on seaside rocks that grow far out into the treacherous Tyrrhene. And no less fair to either ear or eye, she sings her song and calms the winds and sky. O young men, now, while April vies with May, to deck you in the spoils of leaf and flower, let not fame's or virtue's wisps betray your tender minds to their delusive power. He only is wise who follows pleasure's way, and reaps betimes the ripe fruit of each hour. So nature cries. Would you, in this fair season, harden your hearts against her words of reason? Fools, would you cast away, brief as it is, fresh youth, most precious of the gems you wear? Mere names, mere idols, baseless fantasies are worth and honour by which worldlings swear. Fame, whose sweet voice whispers of phantom bliss to you proud mortals, and who seems so fair, is a mere echo, dream lost in shade, at every wind puff scattered and unmade. Let souls untroubled bodies pleasures try, and feed with joy your fragile senses still. Forget the troubles of the past, nor by anticipation hasten future ill. Leave God to heaven, let him shake his sky and scowl, and blaze his arrows as he will. This is true wisdom, this is happiness. Thus nature teaches, thus her works confess. So sings the wicked sprite, and lulls the boy with soft and cunning harmonies to sleep. Writhing into him bit by bit, they cloy his senses in a charm both strong and deep. Thunder could not now wake him or annoy Death's silent looks that over his features creep. Now from her ambush the false sorceress flies, and looms above him, vengeance in her eyes. But when she fixed those eyes on him to see his calm face as he drew breath, soft and light, his eyes that seemed to smile so charmingly, though closed, if they now opened, what delight! She halts, transfixed, and next him presently sits down to gaze, feeling her rage and spite stilled as she hangs above him, marvelling, as once Narcissus hung above his spring. From off his brow the trembling drops of sweat she with her veil daubed quickly, and essayed by gentle fanning movements to defeat the scorching summer skies with soothing shade. Thus, who could credit it, the slumbering heat hid in his eyes melted the ice that made her heart harder than adamant, and lo, she has turned a lover who was once his foe. Lily and rose, and clustering meadows sweet that bloomed along that stream's enchanting rim, she now begins with marvellous art to pleat in chains which bind, though soft, the strongest limb, and wreathes them round his neck, his arms, his feet. Thus did she conquer and imprison him. Thence, as he sleeps, upon her car near by, she places him, and soars up through the sky. Not towards Damascus's royal seat she now, nor toward her wave-girt keep, urges her steeds, but, jealous of so dear a pledge, her brow aflush with shame and ardour, she proceeds to hide in boundless ocean, with a prow from our shores never, or but rarely, speeds, far from all lands. There, her lone domicile hid from the world's sight, lies a little isle that, with the isles nearby, from Fortune takes its name. Arriving there, she flies up to a mountain wondrous high, unpeopled, dark, its peak swathed in brown air, and makes huge snowdrifts by enchantment lie along its flanks and verges, but leaves bare the summit, decking it in leaf and flower, and there makes rise a sumptuous lakeside bower, where now her lover stays to bill and coo in a soft April season without end. Now from this far and secret prison you must seek to extricate your youthful friend, and foil the jealous lady's guardians, who her magic mountain and her roof defend. You will not lack a guide in this great deed, who'll furnish you with weapons at your need. Scarce having left this river, you will find a lady young of face, ancient in years. You'll know her by the forelock you'll see bind her brow, and by the motley that she wears. She'll help you leave the high sea's surge behind, swifter than eagle's wing can cleave the airs, swifter than lightning's flash. Nor need you learn to trust her guidance, lest at your return, below the mountain where the witch abides, you'll see strange pythons writhing, all their jaws hissing, and rough-backed boars with bristling hides, and bears and lions opening giant maws. But shake a wand I'll give, whatever betides, its whistle through the air will give them pause. Yet will you find, if truth be truth to speak, a peril far more grievous near the peak. On it a fountain springs, so fair and pure that it makes thirsty all who look on it, but hidden in its crystal, cooling cheer the secret evils of strange poison sit. For one mere sip from its bright waves, and clear at once makes drunk the soul, giddies the wit, then moves a man to laughter, and that laughter grows till he laughs no more, for ever after. Avert your mouths from it, scorn and abhor its baleful, murderous waters, and eschew the food placed after on their verdant shore. And heed not the perfidious damsels, who with fair lascivious speech set it before your eyes, with looks and smiles that flatter you. Spurn all their glances and their subtle play, and through the high gates pass without delay. Within the walls a labyrinth winds its way, whose thousand turns all hope of flight confound. But I'll give you a scroll that well displays truth's path, lest error make you wander round. A garden lies amidst this daunting maze, whose every leaf breathes love upon that ground. Embowered there in fresh and verdant grass, you'll find the knight reclining with his lass. But soon as she has risen from that field and left her sweetheart, do as I advise. Show yourselves to him, lift the diamond shield that I shall give you right before his eyes, that in it he may see his face revealed in the effeminate garb in which he lies. And at that sight shame and disdain may start to chase unworthy love out of his heart. Now, nothing more remains for me to tell, except that in all safety you shall go and penetrate each inmost hidden cell of that dark place, and all its secrets know. The witch shall have no power to conjure hell to bar your passage or to make it slow, nor, such power guides you, shall Armida be prescient enough your coming to foresee. Nor with less safety shall you then pursue, having escaped her haunts, your homeward flight. But now the hour for sleep has come, and you must rise tomorrow by the dawn's first light. So spoke he, and escorted them into the chamber that would lodge them for the night. Leaving them glad and thoughtful there, he rose, the good old man, and sought his own repose. Below, the waves lie peaceful, still and clear. Above, black forests make a gloomy scene, and in between a cavern's depths appear, moist with cool springs, with fronds of ivy green. To curb the weary ships, no hawsers here need be employed, no anchors cast. Serene the sea rests in this quiet, lonely place, and here the maid furled up her sails apace. Behold, she said to them, that massive pile that rises on yon lofty mountain peak. There, amid folly, sports, and feasts meanwhile, Christ's champion lolls in pleasure, soft and weak. Him When the skies with morning sunlight smile, you must in that steep mountain fastness seek. Don't linger, for that realm, except at first dawn's light, is at all hours malign and cursed. Yet by the waning light still left today, you on your own may seek the mountain's base. Bidding their noble guide farewell, soon they set foot on the desired shore. They race with so much ease along the upward way that they with feet unwearied reach the place. Arrived, they note that Phoebus' chariot sped westward, though far still from the ocean's bed. They see, past giant crags and rocky screes, toward a high, proud peak, a winding pass. Up to the summit's margin all paths freeze with snow and ice, but it bears flowers and grass. Close by its white beard sprouts a verdant frieze, and the ice makes truce with lilies and a mass of tender roses. Magic art here wields a power so great that even nature yields. At the mountain's bottom the two knights descry a shady nook and make camp for the night. But when the sky is once more brightened by the sun, eternal source of golden light, up, up, the quest is beckoning, they cry, ardent and eager to ascend the height. Then, from I know not where, a thing of wrath, writhing and loathsome, blocks their onward path. Its crest and front scaled with pale gold, its strode neck swollen thick with rage and eyes aflame, breathed smoke and blight and covered all the road beneath its bloated belly as it came. Now it withdraws into itself, now node on node uncoils, dragging its monstrous frame. Thus to its wonted place of watch it slides, but does not slow the warrior's rapid strides. Already Charles has drawn to strike the drake, when the other shouts, "What's this? And do you mean by strength of hand or weaponry to make the reptile guardian vanish from the scene?" The charmed gold wand he then begins to shake. The monster hears its whistling, shrill and keen, and fearful at the sound, and swift to flee, it slithers off and leaves that passage free. A little further up, a lion braves their path, roaring, his eyes aglare and grim, his great mane bristling, and the horrid caves of his maw agape. Rage shakes his every limb, his tail lashes his huge bulk as he raves. But hardly has the wand been shown to him, when secret fear within his heart makes freeze his wrath and native pride, and he too flees. The pair haste on, but now against them come thousands of monsters armed that glare and cry havoc. Their myriad shrieks and bellows numb the ear, their myriad shapes confound the eye. All creatures monstrous and ferocious from Nile unto Atlas, and all lands nearby seem gathered here, as many beasts as roam Hercynia's or Hyrcania's forest gloam. No army has the courage or the might to halt or hinder them in their advance, yet are they thrown, strange wonder, into flight by a soft whistling and a fleeting glance. Soon the two heroes reach the mountain's height, meeting no more resistance or mischance, except as steepness of their upward way and ice beneath their footsteps caused delay. But having crossed the snows and climbed up high above the rugged path and steep terrain, they found a balmy, pleasant summer sky, and near the peak an ample, open plain. Forever fresh and sweet, their breezes ply a constant, steady flow, so that the twain do not, as elsewhere, feel the wheeling sun hurry their breaths or slow them as they run. Nor does the weather here vary the frost with heat, or clouds with limpid sky by turns, but heaven's vault, its splendour never lost, shines with delight, and neither chills nor burns, nurturing meadow green with flowers embossed, perfumes in flowers, and shade in trees and ferns. By a lake there, on a proud height that commands mountain and seas, the gorgeous palace stands. The knights now, feeling out of breath and spent by the high, arduous climb, make frequent stay, strolling the verdant fields with bloom besprent, now moving on, now stopping on their way. And lo, a fountain from the steep rocks sent invites their lips to bathe. Its fine spray through a broad conduit forced in countless gushes sprinkles with droplets all the grass and rushes. But then the waters, gathered up between high grassy sides, in a deep duct appear, and under shade of branches evergreen, flow murmuring, cool and dark, and yet so clear that nothing that is lovely hides unseen, even in their utmost depths, but must appear. While on the high banks foliage lush and sweet spreads out to form a cool and soft retreat. "Behold the laughing spring," they cried. "Behold the stream where peril spreads a deadly gin. Now must we keep wills bridled and controlled, and be most watchful how we venture in. Let us shut up our ears, nor be cajoled by these false sirens' songs of joy and sin. So shall we come where the stream's windings make a wider bed and spread to form a lake. Here, decked with viands precious, rich and rare, a table lies prepared upon the shore, and sporting in the crystal water there 2 wanton damsels wage a merry war. They chatter, splash each other's faces, dare each other to explore the fountain's floor, then dive, and heads and shoulders one by one discover when their game at last is done. The loveliness of these nude swimmers tests somewhat the armoured heart of either knight, and makes him stop to watch, while in their jests and sports the maids continue to delight. One then dips up and upward from her breasts, shows everything that most allures the sight, quite open to the sky, while through the veil of the pond her other limbs grow white and pale. As the morning star out of the sea's great womb ascends, dripping with dew, or as of old at her great birth from ocean's fecund spume, love's goddess rose in loveliness untold, so she appeared, so did her hair assume a crystal gloss of moisture in its gold. She turned her gaze then, making as she saw them just then, and shrank back modestly, and suddenly her tresses, that she kept knotted atop her head, she moved to untie, so that, cascading in long strands, they draped in a golden cloak her skin of ivory. Ah, what fair sights here from their eyes escaped! But no less fair what they were hidden by. Thus, hidden by her hair and by the spring, she turned to them a bashful, radiant thing. She smiled the while, and then she blushed a while, and blushing made her smile more lovely still, while yet more blushes lovelier for her smile, on tender cheeks and chin their roses spill. She lifts her voice then in so sweet a style that, matched with it, the sweetest voice seems shrill. O fortunate pilgrims, who have gained the grace of reaching this abundant, blessed place! This is the haven of the world. You'll find respite here from all toil, and the delight known in that golden age when all mankind lived innocent, unbridled, free of spite. Now you may safely leave those arms behind that once you needed to sustain the fight. Vow them to silence in these shady dells. Here you'll be knights of love, and nothing else. And your sweet battlefield will be the bed or the soft grass where you may joust at leisure. By us to the great presence you'll be led of her whose subjects bless her without measure. For you are chosen to be named and bred among the men she destines to her pleasure. But first, please you, wash off in this pure flood your dust, and from this board partake of food. So one speaks, while the other caprioles, matching her words with gestures and with glances. Just so a strain from well-turned strings controls the pace, now quick, now slow, of stately dances. But the knights harden and make deaf their souls to these perfidious and false advances. The flattering looks and sweet words only touch them outwardly, nor move their feelings much. If of that sweetness some part pierces in the region where desire's seedlings lie, reason at once, all armoured against sin, cuts down the burgeoning will to make it die. One couple stays there, baffled in chagrin, the other leaves, with never a goodbye. 2 to the splendid palace found their way, the other 2 dived back in sad dismay. Round is the splendid pile, its inmost womb, the seeming centre of its circling bound, a garden close, lusher with lavish bloom than any else throughout all time renowned. And, on the way there, room by gloomy room, its demoned rites ranged corridors all round, so that it lies athwart their crisis crossways, by winding paths confined in a false maze. Through the main entry, for 100 gates gave access to that huge abode they went, the portal all embossed with silver, grates on golden hinges bright with ornament. They fixed their gaze upon the sculptured plates where rich art the rich metal quite outwent. It lacks but speech, but lacks in life no wise, nor lacks even speech if you but trust your eyes. See here among Maeonian maidens lie Alcides with his distaff, glib and trim. He conquered hell once, held up stars and sky, now twirls a spindle while love laughs at him. See Iole with unwarlike hand nearby make sport to wield his weapons huge and grim, his lion skin draped on her back in game, too rough a robe for such a tender frame. On the other side, see the white wavelets spire and froth-capped crests upon the sea's green field. See in their midst in double ranks draw nigher warships and men, gleaming from prow and shield. The waves flame gold, it seems their martial fire keeps all Leucadia in one blaze concealed. Here Caesar's Rome and Anthony's Orient there, Egypt, Arabia, India, seaward fair. You would say the Cyclades, uprooted, flee their shores that mountains with great shocks collide. So great the force when galleys on that sea come to encounter, towering side by side. Now torches fly, now darts, now tragedy strews ocean with strange slaughter far and wide. Yet look, while neither way the scales yet lean, look there, she flees, the great barbarian queen. And Anthony, does he flee too? Being so near world dominance, does he leave that hope behind? He does not flee, no, feels not fear but the lure of her who flees and draws his mind. See how he groans to know that he is here at once by love, by shame, by wrath made blind, gazing in turn, now at the cruel fight that hangs in doubt, now at the sail in flight. Then, sheltered in the channels of the Nile, he waits for death upon her lap prostrate, delighting in her lovely face, his smile showing him reconciled to his hard fate. With such designs the sculptor's burren file made rich the metal on the royal gate. The warrior pair, having withdrawn their gaze from this fair show, entered the treacherous maze. As they meander with digressive flow, now sings, now climbs with still redoubling tack, now rolls his waters toward his wellsprings, now to sea, and coming sees himself come back, so wildly, wilder still, weave to and fro these windings, yet the scroll plots every track, the scroll, gift of the sage, and by its art resolves their doubts and makes all tangles part. And as they leave behind these mazy spells, a garden opens in a blithe expanse. Still ponds and crystal fountains, mossy cells, bright varied blooms and sundry trees, green plants of all kinds, sunlit hillocks, shady dells, forests and caves it offers at one glance, and what perfects the pleasure in each part, the art that makes it never seems like art. You would think, so mixed is negligence with care, mere nature wrought both ground and broideries. All seems art made by nature, every one miming what mimes her but herself to please. The breeze whereby the sorceress moves the air, the breeze engenders flowers in the trees. Near deathless fruit undying blossoms ride, here budding and there ripening side by side. On the same tree, where the same branches twine, the plump fig near the budding fig grows old. On the same bough bright apples glow and shine, some new and green, some ripening to gold. Aloft, laden with fruit, the twisted vine, luxuriant in the sun, writhes uncontrolled. Here grapes sprout green amid the flowers, and here drip nectar, gilt and garnet, sphere on sphere. Among the green fronds, charming birds intone in tuneful counterpoint their wanton lays. The green leaves whisper and the soft waves moan, struck by the murmuring wind in varying ways. When birds are still, the air decants alone, and when they sing again, more gently plays. The tuneful breeze by chance or art now sighs in concert, now an antiphon replies. Among the other birds, one floats and glides with multicoloured plumes and purple beak, who moves his tongue in fluent wise and guides its sounds in language like the one we speak. So artfully he sings, his speech provides a prodigy exotic and unique. Intent to hear, the rest no longer trill, and in mid-air the whispering winds fall still. Ah, see, he sang, the shamefast virgin rose first bursting her green bud so timidly, half hidden and half bare. The less she shows herself, the lovelier she seems to be. Now see her bosom, budding still, unclose, and look, she droops and seems no longer she, not she who in her morning set afire 1,000 lads and maidens with desire. So passes in the passing of a day the leaf and flower from our mortal scene, nor will, though April come again, display its bloom again, nor evermore grow green. Ah, let us pluck the rosebud while we may. It all too soon fades from its morning sheen. Let us pluck the rose today, to love and burn while we can love and be loved in return. Then he is still, and the whole choiring band of birds, as in ascent, once more begin. The doves kiss with redoubled kisses, and each beast takes thought some loving mate to win. It seems the hard oak and chaste laurel stand entranced amid their spreading leafy kin. It seems all earth and waves and skies above breathe the sweet scents and sweet sighs of love. Amid such tender music, past delights so false to heed, so flattering to see, unmoved and constant wander the two knights hardened to pleasure's lure and fancy free. Lo, between branch and branch meanwhile their sights pierce through the gloam and see, or seem to see, then clearly see the lover and his lass, he lying in her lap, she on the grass. Her veil part at her bosom, and her hair, loosed to the warm breeze, lets its ringlets dance. She swoons in his caress, cheeks flushed and bare, while silver beads of sweat their charms enhance. Like sunlight on a wave, a smile plays there, and trembles glistening in her wanton glance. She hangs over him, and from his resting place in her soft lap he looks up at her face, and feeds on it with ravenous surmise, consumed and quite undone by that fair sight. She leans down, now drinks kisses from his eyes, now with her lips sucks up their sweet delight, and at that moment he so deeply sighs you would think, now is his whole soul taking flight, a pilgrim to her heart. Hidden away, the champion pair observe this amorous play. There hung, strange armour, shining in its frame, a crystal mirror by the lover's knee, and now he lifts it to his rising dame, her chosen servant in love's mystery. With laughing eyes she, he with eyes of flame, one object both in diverse objects see. For her the glass displays herself, for him her limpid eyes with love's own image brim. In slavery one, the other in mastery glories, she in herself, and he in her. Turn, said the knight, ah, turn, he said, on me those eyes that bliss on other men confer. For though you know it not, my fires shall be of all your beauties the true portraiture. Their form and all their marvels in my breast better than in your mirror lie expressed. If you disdain me, ah, at least behold your own face, where all joys and graces reign. For your gaze, though to other objects cold, will take delight turned on itself again. No mirror can so sweet a sight unfold, nor a small glass all paradise contain. The only mirror worth you is the sky, whose stars reflect your loveliness on high. Armida smiles to hear, but keeps her gaze fixed on herself, love's labours to behold. Her locks she braided, and their wanton ways in lovely order marshalled and controlled. She wound the curls of her fine strands with sprays of flowers, like enamel worked on gold, and made the stranger rose join with her pale breast's native lily, and composed her veil. No peacock in his pride so bravely shows his pomp of plumes in myriad-eyed display. No rainbow in such purple, gold, and rose with arched and dew-wet bosom greets the day. But more than all her trim, her girdle glows, that even when nude she never puts away. Girt in it, she makes shapes where there are none, and blends what no man else may blend in one. Kind scorns, placid repulses, tranquil change, glad reconciliations, jest and game, eloquent smiles, sweet outbreaks, the whole range of tears, soft kisses, sighs that went and came, all these she fused in compounds rare and strange, and tempered them in a slow fire's flame, and formed of them that magic zone she placed, and ever kept around her lovely waist. At last she breaks her contemplation, asks leave of him, kisses him, and soon departs. So every day she leaves for her own tasks, and pores upon her book of magic arts. He stays, since from the realm where now he basks he is not free to visit other parts. He strolls alone with beasts and trees all day, a hermit lover while she stays away. But when the dark with friendly silences calls weary love to stolen bliss once more, they spend their glad nocturnal hours in these gardens beneath one roof, even as before. But now when, bent on graver offices, Armida closed her blissful bower's door, the pair, hid in the brush till then, stepped out to face him, armoured proudly, bold and stout. As the fierce courser, who from war's ordeal has been removed victorious, and is found a stud in vile repose and down at heel, ambling ungirt through herds and pasture ground, when roused by trumpet blast or glint of steel, at once veers, loudly neighing toward the sound, longs for the lists and a rider on his back, to meet once more the shock of the attack. Even so the youth responded when the gleam of weapons of a sudden struck his eyes. His warlike soul, where ardour ruled supreme, that glimmer all at once now caused to rise, long though it languished in its drunken dream of pampered ease in pleasure's paradise. Hubert, meanwhile, stands facing him to wield, raising it toward his face, the adamant shield. He on the bright escutcheon turns his gaze, that shows what kind of man he has become, and how finely decked out. Sweet perfume plays the wanton in his hair and cloak. Struck dumb, he sees his sword, his very sword, ablaze with womanish cords, till luxury succumb. Adornment makes it seem a useless toy, not the fierce tool a soldier might employ. Like one whom dismal and protracted sleep from manic ravings to himself returns, so he returned to see himself so deep in sin that, mirrored in that glass, he learns to drop his gaze, feeling repentance creep through his whole frame, while shame within him burns. He would have hid himself beneath the seas, or in a fire, or at earth's core found ease. And now Hubert began to speak. At war all Asia now and all of Europe stand. All who seek glory, all who Christ adore, labour in arms now in the Syrian land. You only, you, great Bertel's son, here snore, far from the world, chained on a petty strand. The call that calls the whole world does not call, staunch champion of a wench, to you at all. What slumber or what sloth has so snuffed out your worth? What vile compunction so unmanned? Up, up! Hear Godfrey's and the armies shout. Fortune and victory await your hand. Come, destined warrior, bring the end about to a task so well begun. Make that vile band whom you shook once before fall down, abhorred, swept from the earth by your relentless sword. He said no more. The noble youth remained stock still, a moment stunned as in defeat. But then, as shame gave way, his anger gained. Anger, fierce warrior guarding reason's seat, till all his face, by that new fire stained, blushed redder yet and seethed with yet more heat. He ripped his robes, his vain gauds, and the rest of slavery's wretched badges from his breast, and hasty to be gone he struggled free of the labyrinth's tortuous passages and fled. Armida had by this time come to see the royal gate's fierce guardian beast lie dead. She now surmised, and soon knew certainly, that her dear love was fleeing or had fled, then saw him where, bitter sight, he strode a fugitive, hurrying from their sweet abode. She tried to cry out, "Will you, cruel man, leave me alone here?" Pain choked off her cry, and in her heart the plaintive words began to echo in a yet more bitter sigh. Ah, wretched girl! A wisdom greater than her wisdom robs her now of all her joy. She sees it, yet endeavours to detain him by her magic arts, but all in vain. As many spells as ever, bent on ill, Thessalian witch with unclean mouth might hiss, potent to make the wheeling heavens fall still, or to unfetter shades from deepest dis. She knew them all, but now they balk her skill, and silence answers her from hell's abyss. She leaves her demon charms, and tries to press the mightier charms of beauty in distress. She runs, all honour lost, all decency. Ah, where are all her boasts and triumphs now? Love's reign, however powerful he might be, she made or unmade with nods of her brow, her scorn so equal to her pride that she loved to be loved, but spurned the lover's vow. She pleased herself alone, others she knew only as proofs of what her eyes could do. Cast off now, scorned, neglected, see her go in chase of him who flees and spurns her sight, as though intent to make her tears of woe adorn the gift of beauty hid its light. She speeds, heedless of mounted crags and snow that bruise her tender foot-soles from her height, and makes her cries like heralds go before, nor reaches him till he has gained the shore. Distraught she cried to him, "O you, who take part of me with you, and leave part behind, take one, or give the other back, or make both die. Hold your steps, at least to mind the last fond words of her whom you forsake. I will not say last kisses, may you find a worthier mouth. Why, faithless, fear to stay? You had strength to flee, you have strength to say me nay." And Hubert said then, "It would not seem wrong, my lord, to wait her fine overtures. She comes now, armed with beauty and a tongue of sweet wail for the harsh fate she endures. What strength but yours could hear the siren's song, and, listening to it, overcome their lures, thus crowning reason, the pacific queen, over all your sense, to grow more fine and keen?" The knight makes pause then, and she joins him, weak, gasping, and tearful, with so sad an air none sadder could be pictured, none more bleak. With a look as dolorous as she is fair, she fixes him. She stares and does not speak, or scorns to speak, or thinks, or does not dare. He does not look, or looks at her as though with furtive gazes, or ashamed or slow. As a fine singer, before lifting high his voice to vent a powerful melody, leads up to it and charms the standers-by with a sweet prelude in a milder key, so she does not, for all her soul's outcry, wholly forget her craft and witchery, but first prepares the ground by tuneful art for what the voice imprints within the heart. And then she spoke. "Think not, cruel man, that I will speak as lover speaks to lover, though such we once were. And if you now deny that memory, or find it full of woe, at least attend me as your enemy. A foe at times hears pleas even from a foe. Surely to hear me now would be an act that leaves your indignation quite intact. If you, in hating me, feel pleasure, say to your hatred now. I'll not object, be glad. You think it just, then just it is. I hate all Christians, yes, and hated you, dear lad. I was born pagan, and laid traps to abate your power by such devices I had. I hounded you and snatched you up to change your field of war to realms unknown and strange. Add to this what you deem your greatest shame, your worst, your most injurious defeat. I lied, I lured you till love overcame. Vile flattery, sure, iniquitous deceit, let one's virgin flower be plucked, to tame a man to kneel at beauty's tyrant feet, to make a prize, withheld with so much thrift from thousand others, one new liver's gift. There, let this then be a lie of mine, to assoil my crimes, that make you feel so wrought upon, as to depart and quite detest the soil that gave you such delight in days bygone. Go then, traverse the ocean, fight and toil, destroy our faith. Myself will urge on. What have I said? Your faith? Ah, mine no more. You are the cruel idol I adore. But let me follow, do not banish me. You are the raptor, do not leave your prey, a small request, even to an enemy. When victors go, their captives do not stay. Make whole your triumph, let your army see one final trophy on your glorious way. To scorn your scorner, bid me be displayed, pointing your finger, your despised handmaid. Despised handmaid, for whom shall I now save these curls, since they are worthless in your eyes? I crop them and so make the name of slave with slavish looks conform and sympathize. Where fires of battle hottest blaze, I crave to be with you when war or havoc cries. I have the courage, have sufficient force to bear your lance for you, or lead your horse. I shall be what you like, shield-bearer, shield to guard you. I'll not spare myself nor rest. This bosom and this soft, bare neck shall yield to piercing weapons pointed at your breast. Perhaps, to keep me living on the field, some cruel infidel will deem it best to spare you, leaving sweet revenge for this abandoned beauty's sake, such as it is. Ah, wretch, still I presume, still flaunt my dreams of desprised beauty, profitless to me. He motions her to say no more, while streams course down her cheek as from a mountain scree. She seeks to grasp his hand, his cloak, and seems a suppliant maiden. Falling backward, he struggles a while, that conquers every doubt, his tears locked in his heart, and love locked out. Love is locked out, nor lights the ancient flame in him again, for reason thwarts its lure. Yet gentle pity enters all the same, whoever attends to love, though chaste and pure, and steers him so that he can scarcely tame the sobs that threaten his discomfiture. But he curbs the tender urge, and by sheer will controls his bearing and makes his face grow still. Then he replies, Armida, your distress grieves me. Ah, that I might assuage your woe and ease the unwise ardour you confess. I feel no hatred, do not scorn you, no. I seek no vengeance, bear no grudge, much less wish that you were either my slave or foe. You strayed, yes, overstepped the mark of late, by revelling now in love, now in hate. What of it? Those are common human flaws. Your race, your sex, your youth, excuse them all. I partly failed too. As I wish my cause to meet with grace, let me not judge your fall. You'll be with me whenever I shall pause, in joy or care, at honoured memory's call. I am your knight and champion, in so far as honour and faith permit, and age's war. Ah, let our sin end here, so that no tongue by publishing our shame give you offence, and let its memory lie entombed among these wastes, far from the world's experience. Of all my deeds, let this deed stay unsung in Europe and its neighbour continents. Ah, ask not that a blot both base and lewd should stain your beauty, worth, and royal blood. Stay here in peace. It is not fit you may come with me, for my guide forbids it quite. Stay here, or freely go some other way, and calm your counsels in your wisdom's light. She, while the warrior speaks, can scarcely stay still, but reels, turbid, restless in his sight. For a good while she scowls at him, aghast, then glowering, cursing, she explodes at last. Sophia did not bear you, you were not sprung from that ancient bloodline. You the crazed sea surge and ice of Caucasus begot, or some Hyrcanian tigress nursed and raised. Why then should I dissemble more? No jot of human warmth shows here. He stands unfazed. Does he change colour? No. Or at my woe at least shed tears? Or heave one quick sigh? No. Should I speak then, or silently endure? He says he's mine, but leaves me in good time. The generous victor of his foe, quite sure, forgets offences, pardons grievous crime. Hear how he speaks, hear how this chaste, this pure Xenocrates makes love with reason rhyme. O heaven, O gods, why let such brutes assail your towers with thunder and deem your temples frail? Well, go then, cruel man, in as much peace as that you leave me here. Go, wretch, go now. Soon shall you find my naked spirit seize upon your track, a vengeful ghost, I vow. I'll haunt you as I loved without surcease, a blazing fury crowned with serpent brow. And should you chance to escape the sea, nor yield your corpse to rack, but reach the battlefield, there, sprawling in your gore among the slain, you'll pay, false knight, for all the wrongs I bear. You'll call Armida's name again and again with your last gasps. That's what I hope to hear. Breath failed the doleful woman, and in vain she strove to finish all she would declare, but swooned away, feeling a cold sweat rise all over her, and fell and closed her eyes. You closed your eyes, yes, Armida. You closed your eyes, Armida. Destiny envied all ease to your tormented soul. Open your eyes, poor girl. Do you not see your enemy shed tears without control? Ah, could you hear them now? How dear would be the sighs he breathes, how they might make you whole. He gives you what he can, though you deny, a pitying gaze and looks his last goodbye. What will he do now? Should he on these bare sands leave her between life and death, or stay? His courtesy, his pity hold him there, but hard necessity bears him away. He turns, and gentle zephyrs fill the hair of the escort, who awaits him in the bay. Over the deep her golden sail speeds on. She gazes shoreward, and the shore is gone. When, coming to, Armida came to know the desert waste and silence all about. Is he gone then? She said, and could he go and thus forsake me with my life in doubt? No moment's stay, not one brief aid bestow, traitor in my extremity, not hear me out, and yet do I still love him? Should I keep this shore and unavenged sit down and weep? What more have tears to do with me? Have I no other arts, no other weapons then? I will pursue him. No place, neither sky nor the abyss shall see him safe again. Ah, now I find him, seize him, rip his heart, hang high his scattered limbs to caution cruel men. He excels in cruelty? I too can play that game. But where am I? What's this I say? Wretched Armida, you should not have waited to afflict, as he deserved, that cruel night, while he was in your chains. But now belated hatred inflames your laggard wrath and spite. Yet, unless beauty and craft are unrelated, I am not weak, if wit and will unite. The task, O my spurned beauty, calls for you. Yours is the injury, the revenge your due. That beauty is the prize I shall bestow on him who severs the detested head. Come then, O all my famous lovers, lo, hard is the task, but glory lies ahead. Come, share my throne. A single vengeful blow will make you partner of my wealth and bed. If I'm not worth the purchase or the pay, nature bestowed my beauty's gift in vain. Unhappy gift, I spurn you. I detest my crown, my life, my birth, my very will to stay alive. All dross. Only the quest for sweet revenge can keep me living still. Her wrath in broken phrases thus expressed, she leaves the abandoned beach and turns uphill, a fury crazed, shaking in all her frame, with hair blown loose, eyes blazing, face aflame. Back in her lodgings, with a horrid spell she conjured up 300 gods of dis. Black clouds obscure the sky at once and swell. Day's great undying star grows pale at this. Storms smite and smother the high crags, while hell begins to mutter at her feet and hiss. Throughout the palace you can plainly hear snarls, howls, groans, bellows raging far and near. Shades blacker than black night, in which no ray of light is mixed, come surging everywhere, except where brief and glimmering flashes play in the profound gloom with a fitful glare. At last the darkness ends and pallid day returns. But gone now is the balmy air, the palace gone, with not a trace to cause a man to say, "Yes, this is what it was." As in mid-air a huge cloud shape is shown at times, but not for very long displayed, melted by sunlight or by swift winds blown, or as dreams by a sick man fashioned fade, those buildings vanished. There remained alone the mountains and the frosts that nature made. Then, on her chariot ever standing by, she takes her seat and rises to the sky. She treads the clouds and parts the winds in flight, while storms and roaring whirlwinds round her shake, that skirts the distant realms of polar night, leaving their unknown dwellers in her wake, passes Alcides' straits, keeps out of sight both Spain's and Mauritania's gates, to take on high above the sea's expanse her course, until she comes at last to Syria's shores. From there she neither seeks Damascus, nor the sight of her once cherished homeland craves, but guides her chariot to the barren shore where her great palace stands amid the waves. Arrived, she finds a cupboard, shuts the door, forbids her presence to her maids and slaves, and walks in fitful thought from path to path. But soon her sense of shame gives way to wrath. "I too shall go," says she. "Before the king of Egypt moves the armies of the east, I'll use all arts, transform to anything uncouth that suits my purpose, man or beast, wield bow or sword, be the hireling of kings to make them quarrel. Thus at least I shall exact what poor revenge I may. No honour, no respect shall bar my way. As for my guardian uncle, let him blame himself, whose high will made me acquiesce. Through him my great soul and my frail sex came in tawdry rows to posture and transgress. He spurred my ardour, he drowned out my shame, and made me act the damsel in distress. On his account be all that I of late did out of love, and now do out of hate." And pondering thus, she gathers hastily her knights, maids, pages, sergeants, everyone, and in their robes and gorgeous pageantry displays her art and royal state. This done, she sets out on her way precipitately, and never sleeps or rests by noon or sun, till she arrives where gathering hordes of war cover the sands of Gaza's sunlit shore. Such and so great a king now readies all his hosts, or rather, finds them ready to be hurled against the Franks who stand so tall by victories made strong, and lucky too. Armida comes just as the trumpets call at the appointed hour for their review. Outside the walls on a wide plain she spies the assembled powers pass before his eyes. None more were left, when unexpectedly Armida appeared and made her troop parade. She came on a great chariot seated high, her gown tucked up, equivote archer made, her new-found wrath now mingling cunningly with native sweets that in her features played, had cruel power that endowed her sight with menace, yet the menace gave delight. Her chariot, like the car that bears the day, with pyrops and with jacinths, sparkles clear. 4 unicorns, yoked 2 by 2, obey at the gemmed pole their skilful charioteer. 100 each of maids and page boys play, riding alongside, quiver girt, and rare on agile snow-white coursers, quick to heed the reins with curvets and with bursts of speed. Next comes her train, and in it Aradin with Hydrith's hired troops from Syria's strand, as the matchless bird, reborn, eager to win once more her far-off Ethiopian land, with many-coloured plumes resplendent in her native golden crown, and ruffed neckband dazzles the world, while round her and behind crowd marvelling throngs of every feathered kind, so passes she, a miracle of dress, of grace, of loveliness, and no man there is barbarous enough not to confess that she with love's promptings fill all the air. Scarce glimpsed disdainful in her listlessness, she yet can such a multitude ensnare. What then will happen when with gladder face she lets her fair eyes shine to promise grace? Midst shouts and fanfares, girdled by a race of noble peers, the King of Kings entreats and calls for banquet at his tented place, with his whole court, and at the high board seats himself, showing to all his royal grace, dealing now food, now conversation's sweets. Armida here found ample chance to try her arts amid the jests and gaiety. But once the feast is over, she, who sees all eyes fixed on herself alone, and who notes by clear tokens men of all degrees by her amorous bane infected through and through, now turns to face the king, rising at ease, with a gesture full of pride, yet reverent too, doing her utmost to make voice and face assume both fierceness and magnanimous grace. "O sovereign king," she says, "I too come here to aid our faith and my dear native land. I, though a woman, am a queen. It is clear queens without shame may wage war and command. She who would rule should master every sphere. Sceptre and sword are placed in the same hand. Mine shall not lack the swiftness or the pluck to strike and to draw blood from those I've struck. Do not suppose that not until today I've tasked my proud mind for this noble quest. To guard our law and your imperial sway long have I warred, and I have done my best. Well do you know the truth of what I say, for there's one deed that all men can attest. A great throng of the cross's champions I have captured, chained, and made endurance lie. Taken by me and bound, they were by me dispatched to you, a splendid gift. They might even now be pent up in the obscurity of dungeons guarded by you, day and night, and you would find your way to victory more safely, sooner end your glorious fight, had not savage Rinaldo killed my men and set those slaves at liberty again. Who this Rinaldo is known. Here, too, a long recital of his feats is told. He is the man whose cruelty pierced me through not long ago, nor has the wrong grown cold. Thus reason goads my hatred ever new, and whets my martial rage, making it bold. You'll hear at length what dire offence he gave. For now let this suffice. Revenge I crave, and I shall have it. Not all arrows ride the wind at random, or fly aimlessly, and heaven's right arm sometimes takes the side of justice against felon weaponry. But if to any other it betide to sever that vile head and give it me, such vengeance would delight me. Yes, although it would be nobler if I struck the blow. So much delight me, that I'll not be loath to grant him any prize I may bestow. Me, dowered with my health, with my wealth and person, both he'll claim and bridle, should he wish it so. To this I hereby swear my solemn oath. To this I pledge inviolate troth. And oh, if such rewards seem worth risk to seek for any here, let him now rise and speak. While she speaks in this wise, his lustful eye addressed as fixes on the lady's face. Heaven forbid, says he, your shaft should fly to do the barbarous murderer such grace. It would be shame, fair archeress, if by a blow from you be touched a heart so base. By me your wrath more fitly shall be sped. Myself shall for a gift bring you his head. Yea, I shall pluck his heart out, I shall turn his hacked limbs into food for crows. These things Indian Adrastus promised, nor did stern Tissaphernes abide his blusterings. And who are you, said he, to froth and burn so proudly in our presence and the king's? One stands here who may top each insolent vow of yours with deeds, though he stands silent now. Responded the fierce Indian, I am one whose deeds are matched by short and sparing speech, but had another's words like yours begun, they'd be the final sermon he should preach. Death would have thus continued, but had done when the supreme king raised his hand to each, who then said to Armida, Gentle fair, a masculine greatness fills the heart you bear. Well worthy are you that the wrath and hate of either or both men be to you consigned, that you might henceforth as you wish dictate against that potent thief their might and mind. Thus will they better serve, and thus your great boldness in war will better witness find. This said, he spoke no more, and they renewed their vows to take up her avenging feud. And not these two alone, but throngs who bore names famed in fight the air with vaunting fed. They all were at her service, they all swore to wreak black vengeance on his loathsome head. Against the knight she held so dear before, in such huge numbers hate is by her bred. But he, having left the shore, did now proceed on his long voyage back with lucky speed. The warrior stopped in the wide clearing, now fixed on yet stranger novelties his gaze. He sees an oak that splits its bark to show a womb-like cave that, opening, displays a form in garments that most strangely flow, a nymph, a wonder, fully grown. Straightways 100 other trees before his eyes make from their wombs 100 fair nymphs rise. As on a stage or painted tapestries the woodland goddesses at times are shown, with naked arms, gowns tucked up to the knees, and busking fine, and lucent locks wind-blown, so these feigned daughters of the rough-barked trees rise up in their beguiling semblances, except that they for bows or quivers bear lutes, harps, or viols, fashioned wondrous fair. They now began their dance and carolling, and in a garland joined their hands to throng around the knight, as sparks might form a ring around a circle's centre. And ere long they weave about the tree's trunk as they sing, and words like these he hears in their sweet song. Welcome to this sweet close, welcome indeed, love of our queen and solace in her need. You have come, long pined for, to bring health to one grown sick and parched, wounded in amorous strife. In this wood that before you lacked all sun, this doleful dwelling for a doleful wife, see how your comings sows from zone to zone evermore joy and clothes all with glad life. So went the song, and then the myrtle side rang with a sound most sweet, and opened wide. When rude Cyllidus opened long ago, the ancient Greeks beheld untold delight. But from its open womb this myrtle now showed a more ravishing and beauteous sight. It showed a woman whose full features glow with all the beauty of an angel sprite. Rinaldo gazes, and becomes aware of seeing Armida's sweet face imaged there. She looks at him, joyful and sad at once, and in one glance 1,000 passions play, then speaks, Do you at last among these haunts return to her from whom you ran away? Why have you come? To comfort me, perchance, for widowed nights, for grief day after day? Or to make war, to drive me off, since you come armed, and hide your lovely face from view? Do you come in love or hate? Not for a foe did I prepare the precious bridge, or send sweet streams, make blossoms rise, let fountains flow, or all your steps from tangling briars defend. Doff then this helmet, show your face, and show your eyes to my eyes, if you are my friend. Join lips to lips, bosom to bosom strain, and at least let your hand clasp my hand again. She went on speaking, and revolved her eyes in piteous turnings, her face pale and gaunt, feigning soft sobs and sweetly melting sighs, her woe expressed in many a pleasing pant, so that such martyrdom in hearts less wise could have made soft the hardest adamant. But he, although not cruel, undismayed, no longer listening, bared his naked blade. He nears the myrtle, whereat with a shriek she hugged the dear tree, and between them stood. Ah, fate forbid that you on me should wreak such outrage as to fell my sacred wood. Put down your blade, O ruthless man, or seek first in Armida's hapless veins her blood. This bosom and this heart alone afford a path to my fair myrtle for your sword. He lifts his sword then, heedless of her prayer, but she is changed, O new monstrosity! Even as in dreams sometimes one shape will bear in quick mutations shape on shape, so she makes huge her limbs, makes swarthy all her fair, crimsons and ivories, and grows to be a towering giant who before him stands, armed like Briareus, with 100 hands. She clenches 50 mighty swords, lets clash with 50 great shields, and frothing threatens so. Each of the other nymphs too in a flash turns to a cyclops, but he fears no foe, and on the guarded tree lays gash on gash that groans as if alive at every blow. The fields of air seemed Stygian fields, such crowds of prodigies and monsters thronged the clouds. The earth below, above the teeming sky resound, one thunders and the other quakes. Winds and tornadoes seem at war then, fly in blasts against his face. Yet nothing breaks the night's onslaught, no fury turns awry his strokes, and not one stroke its aim mistakes. The walnut then, that seemed a myrtle, fell. The phantoms vanished, broken was the spell. The sky grew calm and mild, the wind serene. The wood regained the shape it had before, by no foul spells made joyful or obscene, a place of dread, by natural dread no more. The victor looks what else might yet be seen to bar the felling of the trees for war, then smiles and says within himself, O vain illusions, he's a fool whom you detain. Searching about, he finds on a proud throne Armida by her knights and maids attended. She stood and sighed, preoccupied, alone, as if she with her inmost thoughts contended. Her white hand touched her cheek, above which shone her love-stars, shadowed by her lids and splendid. Whether she weeps or not he does not know, but pearly droplets in her moist eyes glow. He sees the fierce Adrastus near her chair, who stands with fixed gaze as if breathless by her, and with a dazed, infatuated stare feeds eagerly his ravenous desire. But Tissaphernes shoots at him on her looks, now of hunger, now of wrathful fire, and in his regal features alternate the hues of burning love and ice-hate. Next he sees Altamore, who in his place among the damsels sits somewhat apart. Of open passion he shows not a trace, yet manages his lustful eyes with art. His furtive glances find her hand, her face, and sometimes to more guarded places dart, and plunge betwixt her breasts, where a telltale path winds below her fine and careless veil. At last Armida lifts her eyes, and makes her fair brow somewhat more serene and bright. And through her clouds of gloom and grief there breaks a dazzling smile, like a great gleam of light. My lords, she said, the boast you made here wakes my soul and lets it put its woe to flight. Soon shall it be avenged, I have no fear, and wrath is sweet when sweet revenge is near. The Indian answers, Ah, for God's sake, free your face and heart of woe. Be comforted. Right soon shall come the time when you will see lie at your feet Rinaldo's hateful head, or he by this avenging hand shall be hailed to you as your prisoner instead. This I have sworn. The other, hearing all, is silent, though his heart is choked with gall. She, eyeing Tisiphone with winsome cheer, demands, And you, my lord, what do you say? He feigns reply. Since I'm the laggard here, I'll follow from afar the dreadnought way of this your gallant, fearsome cavalier. Pricked by the bitter sting these words betray, the Indian shoots back, With good reason you lag far behind, who fear to dare and do. Then Tissaphernes proudly tossed his head. Ah, that my will were mine now, and I here had free rein of this sword of mine, he said, which of us lags behind would soon appear. I fear you not. Your boasts I do not dread, though heaven's and love's displeasure make me fear. He said no more. Incensed, Adrestus rose, but here Armida moved to interpose. Cried she, "Ah, gentlemen, why do you take from me that gift you often gave before? You are my champions, and that fact should make for peace among you. You must know, therefore, you quarrel with me by quarrelling for my sake. I am the injured party when you jar." So says she, and in harmony controls under her iron yoke discordant souls. Vafrin is there and hears it all, his mind intent on truth. At last he turns to go and probes the great conspiracy, to find it wrapped in silence. Moving to and fro, he even risks questions of a perilous kind, and peril sharpens his resolve to know. He is determined either there to die, or to bear back the secret by and by. Thousands of subterfuges, one by one he tries, thousands of subtle schemes of thought, and yet despite them finds dark and unknown the means or weapons of the secret plot. But luck, as he himself could not have done, of all his doubt at last unties the knot, so that he understands distinct and plain what nets are spread for pious buoyant's bane. And soon, I trust, the enemy will be led hitherward, nor the second day await. And you, Rinaldo, hear me. Guard your head, at which so many of them fulminate. For all the fiercest, their most nobly bred, against it whet their sharp swords and their hate, because Armida pledged to yield that lord who cuts it off herself as a reward. Among them is that Persian, bold and free, Altamore, Samarcand's monarch, of huge force. Adrestus, too, whose realm abuts the sea at the dawn's verge, a giant, huge and coarse, ever a stranger to humanity, curbs an elephant as if a horse. And Tisipherne is there as well, whose name for valorous deeds resounds with sovereign fame. So said he, and the youth, his eyes ablaze in his flushed face, wishes his enemies already all about him, and seems in a daze, ever mastered by great thoughts and ill at ease. Back to the captain Vafrin turned his gaze and added, "Sire, mere trifling things are these. The crowning news comes last. My lord, beware. They plot your ruin by a Judas snare." He led his squadrons forth, when he had seen the Frankish people coming from afar. He too placed his infantry between cavalry wings, like mighty horns of war. The right wing he himself led, sage and keen. The left he puts in charge of Altamore. The foot between them Molius's guides, and in their very midst Armida rides. Rinaldo came where, on her gilded car, Armida sat in bellicose attire. At either side of her for escort are her barons and her lovers gathered near her. She knows his bearings, sees him from afar. Wrath trembles in her eyes and a mad desire. His features blanch with a faint trace of shame. Her heart is ice that quickly turns to flame. The knight avoids her chariot, feigns to be intent upon some unrelated thing, yet cannot now without a fight get free of his sworn rivals in her following. One draws his sword, one lifts his spear, and she already lifts an arrow to her string. Wrath makes her fingers eager to attack, but love assuages spite and holds her back. Love rose against mad wrath to make him know the fire that lived concealed within her heart. 3 times she stretched her hand to bend the bow, 3 times she dropped it with a sudden start. Hatred prevailed at last, and she let go the bowstring to release the feathered dart. The arrow flew, but with it flew her prayer that it be spent in vain upon the air. She even wished the sharp dart would return and pierce her own heart, so her thoughts did run, so strangely love, though conquered, made her yearn. Now what might love triumphant not have done? Then she repents, and her thoughts once more burn with the same rage in which they had begun. Fearing to wound, eager to wound, her eyes follow the speeding arrow as it flies. But the shot's aim was good, for the sharp reed made for the knight's hard hauberk, which it hit too fiercely for a woman's shaft indeed, but splintered there rather than piercing it. He turns his back, pretending not to heed, and she, spurred on by sudden rage, left flit dart after dart to wound his hard head, but as she shoots, love wounds her heart instead. Has he then so impenetrable grown, she asked herself, that he can disregard all hostile strength? Does the same jasper stone encase his limbs that makes his soul so hard? Nor eye nor hand hurts him. He stands alone behind the adamant temper of his guard. Armed, I am overthrown. Unarmed, unprized, both as a lover and a foe despised. What new art, what new shape can now avail to hide me from his eyes? Ah, wretched me! My hope in all my cavaliers is frail. They cannot save me, for I seem to see their strengths and all their weapons fail, matched with the force of his ferocity. Just then, before her eyes, his sword hand thrust through some and stretched out others in the dust. Alone, she cannot save herself, but feels a captive slave already, and although a spear leans on her saddle bow, she deals neither Diana's nor Minerva's blow. As a swan, above whom a proud eagle wheels with cruel claws outstretched, stoops low and droops her wings, so all her movements here grow limp and falter and display her fear. Prince Altamore, who till now had been trying to hearten his lost Persians in their plight, they had already buckled and were flying, while he alone struggled to make them fight, sees her halt thus, and, in an instant spying her danger, turns his course, nay, turns to flight, and leaves his comrades at his honour's cost. So she be saved, he deems the world well lost. He guards the ill-defended chariot's way, and with his steel before it clears the space, while Godfrey and Rinaldo charge and slay his bands as soon as he forsakes his place. He sees it, wretch, and yet he does not stay, a lover graced, a leader in disgrace. He sees Armida safe, and only then return, too late, to aid his beaten men. Marvels did Tissaphernes wreak that day. In disarray he made the Normans sprawl, oppressed the Flanders men with cruel sway, and caused Guerniers, Rogeros, Geralds fall. Then, when his deeds had stretched his mortal day to fame's eternal limit, as if all life seemed of no consequence, he worked his passage where the utmost peril lurked. He sees Rinaldo, and though red splotches blear his blue escutcheon and his arms display their eagle's beak and claws dark with a smear of dust and blood, he knows them straight away. Behold, he said, the ultimate danger here. May heaven assist my valour now, and may Armida see her hated lover slain. His arms I vow, Muhammad, to you fain. So did he pray, a prayer of no avail. His deaf Muhammad never heard his plea. As a lion whips his torso with his tail to make his inborn fierceness rise, so he sharpens his anger, eager to assail at love's whetstone, letting the sparks fly free. Crouched in his armour, bending all his force to the encounter, he spurs on his horse, spurs toward the man who sees he will attack, the Latin knight who calmly fronts his spleen. At that fierce show all bystanders draw back, leaving a spacious combat ground between them. So mightily they lunge and strike and hack, the Italian hero and the Saracen, that each for marvel almost does not heed whither his own wrath and his fortunes lead. Yet one but strikes, the other strikes to hurt, stronger and sheathed in stronger armour, and soon streams of blood from Tissaphernes spurt. His helmet cracks, his shield drops from his hand. The lovely sorceress sees his hacked mail shirt, then sees him totter, weak-limbed and unmanned. And all the others show such sudden fear that feeble is the no that holds them here. Once ringed with champions numberless and free, she now sits on her chariot all alone, loathing her life, afraid of slavery, all hope of victory and of vengeance gone. Between her madness and her panic, she leaps down in haste and throws herself upon a nearby steed and flees, and on her ride anger and love like hounds run by her side. So Cleopatra did in days of yore, and from the cruel fray alone withdrew, leaving behind in perils far from shore, with lucky Caesar faced, her dear one, who, by love unjustly with himself at war, chasing her lonely sails went fleeing too. So Tissaphernes would have stolen away with her, but that the other makes him stay. The pagan, who felt daylight, sun, and air all failing as his comfort passed from sight, turns desperately on him who keeps him there, and strikes him on the brow with all his might. With lesser might does Bronte's hammer bear down on the close-linked thunderbolt and smite. Of such huge force is this great blow possessed, the shock bends his foe's head down to his chest. At once Rinaldo straightened, brandishing his sword, and, where the huge hauberk was rent, opened his side, and makes the sharp point sting his heart. Life's lodging, ye, right through it sent the blade, which made a double opening, both front and back. Thus, as his life is spent, his parting soul is granted courteously more than one passageway by which to flee. Rinaldo pauses and looks, eagle-eyed, where next to attack or aid, only to find no rank left standing on the pagan side, and all their banners fallen and left behind. From further slaughter then he turns aside, cooling war's anger burning in his mind. His mood grows mild, and he recalls the plight of the Lady in her solitary flight. Well had he marked it, and now courtesy and pity charge him to assist her woe. Mindful how he had pledged fidelity as a knight when leaving her not long ago, he turns where she has fled, and comes to see her charger's hoof-prints on the ground below. She, meanwhile, reached a dark and sheltered spot, apt for the solitary death she sought. It greatly pleased her mind that chance should lead her errant steps into this valley's shade. She paused here and alighted from her steed, and down her quiver bow and weapons laid. Unhappy weapons, shameful not to bleed after this battle, said she. In this glade I lay you down. Go lie there, stained with dirt, since you have ill avenged my grievous hurt. Alas, shall none of all these weapons be made wet with blood? Not one? Ah, if elsewhere all breasts seem adamantine to you, see, here to your stroke a woman's breast lies bare. Here are your spoils, here is your victory, here you can come in triumph if you dare. This tender bosom can be pierced by blows, as love, who never vainly aimed there, knows. Prove on me now, to gain my pardon for past cowardice, that you are sharp and strong. Wretched Armida, the great pangs you bore none but yourself can end now, or prolong. Since all else failed that might my health restore, let wounds repair my wounds and right my wrong. Let a dart remove the poison of love's dart, and death be the physician of my heart. Ah, happy death, if love is left behind! Let not that plague's infection hell invade. Let love remain and only anger find the way below, companion to my shade. Or rather with it come back from the blind kingdom to him by whom I was betrayed, and pointed out to him to make him weep, and shake with horror in his fitful sleep. She ceased, her purpose fixed. At once she chose the hardest, sharpest arrow at her feet, when the knight arrived and saw her in her throes, frantic, intent to make her doom complete. Already in her countenance there glows the pallor of the death she comes to meet. Rushing up from behind, he moves to wrest out of her hand the barb aimed at her breast. Armida wheeled around in wild surprise. She had not heard his coming, but now she cried out, averting her disdainful eyes from the dear face, and fainted instantly. She fell, a flower snapped in half that lies with limp neck bent, while, like a column, he with one arm propped her side as she sank down, and at her bosom loosened her rich gown, and bathed the wretched lady's lovely face and lovely breast with many a pitying tear. As at a silvery rain in dawn's first blaze the faded rose grows fair with fresh-hued cheer, so she begins her drooping face to raise, in which new tears, not his tears, now appear. 3 times she raised her eyes, and 3 times then dropped them, and dared not look at him again, and pushed away in scorn with feeble hands his strong supporting arm. Yet, as she tried to slip from him with wordless reprimands, she found herself ever more firmly tied. Caught up at last in those dear fettering bands, dear now, perhaps, despite her show of pride, she let her words in stormy torrents fly, though never venturing to meet his eyes. O you, whose partings and returns contrive still to be cruel, what leads you to this place? I marvel you forbid my death and strive, having murdered me, to make me live by grace. For what more scorn would you keep me alive? What further torments must Armida face? I know all wiles a criminal may try, but can do nothing now, not even die. Surely your honour would grow stained or fade, unless she is dragged in triumph by a chain whom now you seize by force and once betrayed. Go boast of that, your glory's highest gain. Time was when I for life, for concord prayed, but now I long for death to end my pain. That gift I may not ask for, since my fate makes any gift from you increase my hate. Yet by myself, cruel one, I hope to rid myself somehow of your ferocity. Though poison, knives, ropes, cliffs cannot be hid by a prisoner from the jealous jailer's eye, yet can I think of ways you can't forbid, by which I'll know, praise heaven, how to die. Cease now your blandishments. Ah, look at me, look at him, flattering my heart even as my hopes grow dim. Thus grieves she, and among the floods of woe that love and anger make her fair eyes spill, his own soft sorrow mingles and lets glow tranquil compassion and sincere goodwill. And he replies in gentle words and slow, Armida, bid to your stormy heart be still. I keep you for a kingdom, not for spite, no enemy, but your faithful champion knight. If you misdoubt my words, see what unfeigned zeal for your cause shines in my eyes. I swear that to the throne on which your forebears reigned I will restore you, and I declare if in your mind a ray from heaven deigned to pierce the veil of paganism there, I would procure a crown for you at least as noble as the noblest in the East. So speaks he, and so prays, and with his sighs and precious tears warms and anoints his prayers. And as a shower of snowflakes melts and dies in burning sunlight o'er the warm spring airs, so now her violent rage dissolves and dies, to leave only her other passion's cares. Behold your handmaid, says she, let your will dispose of her, and be her master still. Κκαλό βράδυ.